When the city's most ruthless crime boss publicly humiliates a disabled waitress in his underground lair, he has no idea what he's just awakened. She's not a victim. She is revenge. This is the story of a confrontation that changes everything, where arrogance meets courage, where the strongest isn't the one who never falls, but the one who rises from hell. Stay until the end, and comment the name of the city you're watching. I want to know how far this story has come. Rain punched against the windows like fists demanding entry. Inside Obsidian Room, the air tasted like copper and expensive cologne, thick enough to choke on. Celine Vale moved between tables carrying a tray of whiskey glasses that cost more than most people earned in a week. Her left hand steady, her right hand steadier. The carbon fiber prosthetic beneath her black jeans clicked softly against marble with each step, a rhythm she'd learned to make soundless when necessary. Nobody looked at her face. They looked at the leg. Always the leg. Then they looked away. Embarrassed or disgusted or satisfied, they weren't her. It didn't matter which. Celine had stopped caring 8 months ago when she first walked through those heavy steel doors looking for work that didn't ask questions. The Obsidian Room didn't do background checks, didn't care about your past. Only cared if you could carry drinks, keep your mouth shut, and pretend you didn't see the briefcases full of cash changing hands in the back booths. Celine could do all three. She was good at being invisible. Being invisible kept you breathing. She set down 2 glasses in front of a man with knife scars running down his neck like ladder rungs. He didn't say thank you, didn't look up, just slid a folded bill across the table without touching her hand. Celine pocketed it and turned back toward the bar. That's when the doors exploded inward. Not literally, but close enough. Damien Varelli entered like a thunderstorm wearing a $15,000 suit, charcoal gray. Perfectly tailored, his dark hair slicked back, still wet from the rain outside. 6 men flanked him, all armed, all scanning the room with eyes that had seen too much and felt too little. Every conversation died. Forks stopped halfway to mouths. Card games froze mid-deal. Even the bartender straightened up, hands visible, non-threatening. Because Damien Varelli wasn't just dangerous. He was the blueprint for danger, the king of a criminal empire that stretched across the city like roots from a poisoned tree. People whispered about him the way they whispered about ghost stories. And ghost stories didn't walk into your bar unless something bad was about to happen. Celine kept moving toward the bar, keeping her head down, her pace steady. Don't react, don't engage, don't exist. But Damien's eyes found her anyway. She felt his gaze lock onto her like crosshairs, felt the weight of his attention settle across her shoulders. She knew that feeling, had felt it before in darker places. The feeling of being prey. She reached the bar and set down her empty tray. Celine. Marco, the bartender, kept his voice low. Stay in the back for a while. I'm fine. That's not a suggestion. Varelli's drunk. When he's drunk, he's mean. When he's mean, I said I'm fine. Marco's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. Nobody argued with Celine. Something in her eyes made people uncomfortable in ways they couldn't name, like staring into water too deep to see the bottom. She picked up another tray loaded with bourbon and turned back toward the floor. Damien and his crew had taken over the center booth, the throne of the Obsidian Room, where red leather met black marble under a chandelier that looked like frozen blood. He sprawled across the seat like he owned it, because he did. He owned the building, owned the block, probably owned half the people in the room. Celine delivered drinks to a table near the back. An older woman with gold rings on every finger took a glass without looking at her. Celine was good with that. She turned to leave. Hey! The voice cut through the low rumble of conversation like a blade through cloth, loud, arrogant. Damien's voice. Celine kept walking. Hey, I'm talking to you. She stopped, not because she wanted to, because everyone was watching now, and stopping was safer than running. She turned slowly, keeping her face neutral, and met Damien's eyes across the room. He smiled. It wasn't kind. Come here. Celine walked toward the center booth. Each step measured, each breath controlled. The prosthetic leg clicked softly against the marble, and she hated that sound right now. Hated that it announced her before she arrived. Hated that Damien's smile widened when he heard it. She stopped 3 feet from the table. Yes? Damien leaned back, arms spread across the booth like a king on a throne. His men watched her with the blank expressions of people who'd learned not to react until told to. One of them had blood on his collar, fresh. "You're the waitress, right?" Damien's words slurred just slightly at the edges. "Drunk, but not stupid drunk. The dangerous kind." "Yes." "What happened to your leg?" The booth went quiet. The kind of quiet that came before violence. Celine kept her voice flat. "I lost it." "Yeah, no shit. How?" "Fire. Fire." Damien laughed, sharp and ugly. "That's it? Fire? You didn't fight it off? Didn't punch the flames?" His men chuckled, nervous and obedient. "I'm just saying, you look tough, like a fighter, but I guess fighters need 2 legs, huh?" Celine said nothing. That made it worse. Damien sat forward, elbows on the table, studying her like a puzzle that annoyed him. "You don't talk much. You didn't ask a question." One of his men inhaled sharply. "You didn't talk back to Damien Varelli, not if you wanted to leave with the same number of teeth you came in with." But Damien just smiled wider. "I like that. Tough girl." He picked up his whiskey, swirled it, downed it in one gulp. "But you know what? I don't think you're that tough. I think you're hiding. I think that leg," he pointed at her prosthetic with his empty glass, "makes you weak. And you walk around here pretending you're not, but we all see it. The limp, the struggle. You're broken, sweetheart, and broken things don't last long in this city." The room held its breath. Celine looked at him. Really looked. Saw the expensive suit that couldn't hide the violence underneath. Saw the drunk arrogance covering something older and meaner. Saw a man who'd spent so long being feared he'd forgotten what it felt like to be afraid. She could remind him. But not here. Not yet. "Will that be all?" Her voice didn't shake. Damien's smile faltered for just a second. He wasn't used to people staying calm when he pulled the pin on the grenade. He was used to fear, anger, tears, something. He got nothing, and that made him furious. He stood up. 6'2" of muscle and tailored menace. His men tensed, hands drifting toward concealed weapons. The entire bar froze like a photograph. "You think you're tough?" Damien stepped around the table, closing the distance between them. He smelled like whiskey and gunpowder residue. "You think because you survived some fire, you're strong?" Celine met his eyes. "I think you're drunk." Someone gasped. Damien's face went dark. "What did you just—" "You're drunk, you're loud, and you're trying to prove something to these men by humiliating a waitress." She tilted her head slightly. "That's not strength. That's insecurity." The silence that followed could have stopped hearts. Damien stared at her like she'd just spoken a language he didn't know existed. Nobody talked to him like this. Nobody. Then he laughed. It started low and built into something wild and dangerous. "You've got balls, I'll give you that." He turned to his men. "You hear this? The crippled waitress thinks she can read me." He turned back to Celine, and his eyes were cold now. The drunk amusement burned away into something sharper. "Okay, you want to prove you're tough? Let's prove it." "I'm working." "Not anymore." Damien raised his voice, addressing the entire room. "Everyone listen up. This brave girl here thinks she's stronger than she looks. So we're going to find out." He gestured broadly at the open floor space between tables. "Right here. Right now. Her and me. A fight." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. A few people stood up to see better. Nobody left. Nobody called the cops. In the obsidian room, the cops didn't come unless Damien wanted them to. Celine looked at the space he'd indicated, looked at his men, looked at the bartender who was shaking his head frantically, mouthing the word no. She looked back at Damien. "And when I win?" "If," Damien grinned. "If you win, I'll apologize, publicly, right here, for everything I said." "And when you win?" "When I win, you admit you're weak. You get on your knees and you tell everyone here that you're nothing but a broken girl pretending to be whole." The cruelty in his voice was casual, like he was ordering coffee. Celine felt something cold and familiar settle into her chest. She'd felt it before. 4 years ago, when the warehouse exploded around her, and she'd had to choose between saving herself or dragging 3 strangers out of the flames before the ceiling came down. She'd chosen the strangers, lost her leg, gained something else. "Okay," she said quietly. Damien blinked. "What?" "Okay, I accept." The room erupted into noise. Chairs scraping back, people rushing to form a circle. bets being made in harsh whispers. Marco was still shaking his head behind the bar, but Celine wasn't looking at him anymore. She was watching Damien roll up his sleeves. He was smiling like Christmas had come early. Celine untied her apron, folded it carefully, and set it on an empty table. Underneath, she wore a plain black t-shirt and jeans. Nothing special, nothing tactical, just the body she'd rebuilt over 4 years of agony and rehabilitation that the doctors said wouldn't work. The doctors had been wrong about a lot of things. The crowd formed a rough circle under the crimson chandelier, blood-red light spilling across marble that suddenly looked like an arena floor. Damien stepped into the center, loose and confident, rolling his shoulders. Celine stepped in across from him. Someone in the crowd whistled. Someone else laughed. They were already counting her out. Good. Damien raised his fists in a boxer's stance, textbook and clean. He'd been trained. Probably expensive private lessons from some ex-champion who needed money. His footwork was decent. His guard was tight. But he was drunk. And he was angry. And angry drunks made mistakes. Celine didn't raise her fists. She just stood there, weight balanced, breathing slow and even. Damien frowned. You gonna fight or just stand there? Whenever you're ready. He came in fast, throwing a straight right aimed at her face, hard and mean, the kind of punch that broke noses. Celine tilted her head 6 inches to the left. The fist passed by her ear close enough to feel the air move. Damien stumbled slightly, overcommitted, and Celine was already gone, sliding to his outside, letting his momentum carry him forward into empty space. He spun, frustrated, and threw a left hook. Celine ducked under it, smooth and unhurried. The crowd was getting louder now, confused. This wasn't supposed to be a fight. This was supposed to be an execution. Damien reset, breathing harder than he should be. Stop running. I'm not running. He charged, through a combination, jab, cross, uppercut, textbook again, but sloppy with whiskey and rage. Celine slipped the jab, parried the cross with her forearm, and leaned back from the uppercut so it cut through air instead of jawbone. She pivoted on her prosthetic leg, the carbon fiber responding perfectly, and suddenly she was behind him. Damien whirled around, wild now, and swung a haymaker with everything he had. Celine stepped inside the arc of the punch, too close for it to land, and she felt the wind from his fist passing over her head as she drove her shoulder into his ribs. Not hard, just enough. Damien staggered back, breathing ragged, and the confidence was draining from his face. Stand still and fight me, he was shouting now. You're not fighting, Celine said quietly. You're swinging. That broke something in him. He roared and came at her with both hands. No technique left, just rage and pride and the desperate need to hurt something smaller than his own ego. Celine waited. Waited until he committed. Waited until his weight was too far forward to pull back. Then she moved. She dropped low, planted her prosthetic leg like a steel root, and swept his lead foot out from under him with her flesh and blood leg in one smooth, vicious arc. Damien Varelli, the most feared crime boss in the city, went down hard. The sound of his body hitting marble echoed through the obsidian room like a gunshot. Silence crashed down. Total? Absolute. Damien lay on his back, staring at the chandelier above, chest heaving, face red with humiliation and shock. His men stood frozen, hands on weapons, but not drawing, not sure what to do when the unthinkable had just happened. Celine stood over him, breathing easy, not even winded. The crowd stared. Someone's drink hit the floor and shattered, but nobody looked away. Damien tried to sit up, and Celine did something that made it worse. She offered him her hand. Damien looked at it like it was a live grenade. Everyone waited. If he refused, he looked weak. If he took it, he admitted defeat. Either way, he'd just lost something more valuable than money or territory. He'd lost the fear. His face went through a dozen emotions in 3 seconds. Rage, humiliation, disbelief, something that might have been respect, and then back to rage. He slapped her hand away and stood on his own, swaying slightly. The room held its breath. Damien's men tensed. Hands tightened on hidden guns. One command from him and Celine would be dead before she hit the floor. Everyone knew it. Damien opened his mouth, closed it, looked around at the faces watching him, at his men waiting for orders, at the crowd that had just seen a king fall. Something flickered behind his eyes, something that looked almost like recognition. You His voice came out hoarse. He cleared his throat and tried again. You fight like a soldier. I'm a waitress. Bullshit. He wiped blood from his lip where he'd bitten it during the fall. Nobody moves like that without training. Real training. Where'd you learn? Celine said nothing. Damien stepped closer and his men shifted nervously, but he waved them back. He studied her face now instead of her leg, and whatever he saw there made his expression change. The fire, he said slowly. That wasn't an accident, was it? Celine's jaw tightened. You saved someone. Multiple someones. Damien's eyes narrowed. And it cost you. You owe me an apology. Her voice cut through his speculation like a blade. Damien blinked. Then he remembered. The bet. The deal. He looked around at the crowd watching him, at his men, at the legacy of fear and violence he'd spent a decade building. A better man would have apologized right there. Damien Varelli wasn't a better man. Not yet. Tomorrow, he said, his voice tight. I'll apologize tomorrow, publicly, right here. Now. I said tomorrow. Celine took one step closer, quiet, controlled, dangerous. You made a deal, in front of everyone. If you don't honor it now, every person in this room will know your word means nothing. And once they know that, she let the sentence hang, unfinished. Damien's face went white, then red. Because she was right. In his world, reputation was currency. If his word became worthless, he became worthless. Rivals would sense weakness, allies would turn. The empire would crack. All because of a waitress with one leg and eyes like cold water. His hands clenched into fists. The room waited. And Damien Varelli made a choice that surprised everyone, including himself. I'm sorry. The words came out strangled, forced through a throat that didn't want to release them. I was wrong about what I said, about you being weak. You're not weak. Celine waited. And Damien's jaw worked like he was chewing glass. I was a bastard for mocking you, for making fun of your leg. You're tougher than most of the men I know. It wasn't pretty, it wasn't graceful, but it was real. The crowd stirred, uncertain what to do with this moment that shouldn't exist. Celine nodded once. Thank you. She picked up her apron, tied it back on, and walked toward the bar without another word. The circle broke apart. Conversations resumed, nervous and too loud. Damien's men surrounded him, asking questions he didn't answer. He just stood there in the center of the floor, staring at nothing, looking like a man who'd just discovered gravity worked differently than he thought. Marco handed Celine a glass of water when she reached the bar. You just made an enemy, he said quietly. I made him keep his word. Damien Varelli doesn't forget things like this. Celine drank the water. Her hands were steady. Neither do I. She went back to work. The rest of the night crawled by in a strange, tense silence. Damien and his men stayed for another hour, drinking without talking, and every time Celine walked past their booth, she felt Damien's eyes on her. Not angry anymore. Something else. Something harder to read. Finally, just before midnight, Damien stood. His men stood with him. They moved toward the door in a tight formation, and Celine thought that was the end of it. Then Damien stopped, turned around, walked back to the bar. Marco tensed. Celine set down the glass she was drying. Damien stood there for a long moment, looking at her with an expression she couldn't decode, searching for words he didn't have. What's your name? He finally asked. You already know my name. Your full name. Why? Because I want to know who just beat me in front of my entire crew. Celine held his gaze. Celine Vale. Damien nodded slowly, like he was committing it to memory, to history. Celine Vale, he repeated. Then quieter. Where did you learn to fight like that? Same place you learned how to fall. A muscle twitched in his jaw. But he didn't get angry. He just stood there, and for the first time since walking through the doors, he looked uncertain. I meant what I said, the apology. Good. But I need you to understand something. He leaned closer, voice dropping. I don't lose. Ever. And tonight I lost because I was drunk and stupid and underestimated you. That won't happen again. Are you threatening me? No. He straightened up. I'm warning you, because now I'm curious. And when I get curious about someone, I don't stop until I know everything. Celine's expression didn't change. There's nothing to know. Everyone's got a story, Celine Vale, especially people who fight like they've got nothing left to lose. He turned and walked out. His men followed. The door closed behind them with a heavy thud that echoed through the suddenly too quiet lounge. Marco exhaled slowly. That was either the smartest thing you've ever done or the dumbest. Celine went back to drying glasses. But her hands weren't as steady anymore, because she knew what curiosity looked like on dangerous men. And she knew what happened when men like Damien Varelli decided they wanted answers. They didn't ask nicely, they dug. And if they dug deep enough into Celine's past, they'd find things she'd spent 8 months burying, things about the warehouse fire, about the people she'd saved, about the people she couldn't save, about the life she'd burned down along with her leg. She finished her shift at 2 in the morning, walking out into rain that hadn't stopped since sunset. The city looked like it was crying, streetlights reflecting off wet pavement in streaks of neon and gold. Celine pulled her jacket tight and started the long walk home. She made it 3 blocks before she realized someone was following her. Not Damien. One of his men, the one with blood on his collar. Celine kept walking, keeping her pace steady, listening to the footsteps behind her match her rhythm, not closing in, not falling back, just following. She turned down an alley she knew had 2 exits. The footsteps followed. Celine's heart rate didn't spike. Her breathing stayed even. She'd been followed before, hunted before. This wasn't new. She reached the halfway point of the alley and stopped, turned around. The man stood 10 feet away, rain dripping off his jacket, hands visible and empty. "Damien wants to talk to you," he said. "Tell him I'm busy." "It's not a request. Everything's a request if you're brave enough to say no." The man's expression didn't change. "He's offering you a job." That made Celine pause. "What kind of job?" "The kind that pays better than waiting tables." "I like waiting tables." "Do you?" The man tilted his head. "Because you fight like someone who's done a lot more than carry drinks." Celine studied him. Mid-30s. Military posture, scar tissue on his knuckles. He'd seen combat. Real combat, not bar fights. "What's the job?" she asked. "Security consultant, for people who need the kind of protection that understands real threats." "I'm not a bodyguard." "No, you're something better." The man stepped closer and Celine's weight shifted automatically into a defensive stance. He noticed and stopped. "Damien thinks you could teach his people how to fight properly. Not street brawling, real combat training. He's got trainers. He's got ex-boxers and gym rats. He doesn't have anyone who fights like they've walked through fire and came out the other side." The words landed harder than intended. Celine's face stayed neutral, but something must have shown in her eyes because the man nodded like he'd confirmed a suspicion. "Tomorrow night, 9 p.m., Obsidian Room, if you're interested." He pulled out a card, set it on a dumpster between them, and walked away. Celine waited until his footsteps faded completely before she picked up the card. Heavy cardstock. Expensive. Just a phone number embossed in silver. No name, no explanation. Just an invitation into a world she'd been trying to avoid for 8 months. She should throw it away. Should go home, lock her door, and pretend tonight never happened. Instead, she pocketed the card and kept walking. By the time she reached her apartment, a studio above a laundromat that smelled like detergent and old cigarettes, it was almost 3 a.m. She climbed the stairs slowly, her prosthetic leg aching the way it always did after long shifts. Inside, she locked the door, checked the window locks, and finally let herself breathe. The apartment was small, neat. Nothing personal on the walls, no photos, no memorabilia, just furniture and function, the way she'd kept it since moving in. Because personal meant attachments, and attachments meant vulnerability. Celine sat on the edge of her bed and carefully removed the prosthetic, setting it against the wall. Her stump ached, red and irritated from 12 hours of standing. She massaged it gently, working out the tension, and tried not to think about the card burning a hole in her jacket pocket. Tried not to think about Damien's eyes when he'd looked at her after the fight. Tried not to think about the fact that for the first time in 8 months, someone had looked at her and seen more than a broken waitress. They'd seen a fighter, and God help her, part of her had liked it. She lay back on the bed and stared at the water-stained ceiling. Tomorrow she'd throw away the card, Tomorrow, she'd forget about Damien Varelli and his dangerous curiosity. Tomorrow, she'd go back to being invisible. But tonight, in the dark, she let herself remember what it felt like to stand in that circle under blood-red light and show the most dangerous man in the city exactly how strong broken people could be. And she smiled. Just a little. Just enough. Outside, the rain kept falling. And somewhere across the city, Damien Varelli sat in his penthouse office, staring at security footage of the fight on repeat, watching a one-legged waitress dismantle everything he thought he knew about strength. He rewound it, watched again, and again. Something had shifted tonight, something neither of them understood yet, but both of them felt it. The kind of shift that changed trajectories, the kind that turned strangers into something more complicated than enemies, the kind that started with rain and ended with fire. Damien leaned back in his chair and made a decision. Tomorrow he'd find out everything about Celine Vale, every secret, every scar, every reason she fought like someone who'd already lost everything and decided it made her stronger instead of weaker. And then he'd figure out what to do with the most dangerous woman he'd ever met. The woman who'd beaten him with nothing but skill and will and the kind of strength that couldn't be bought or taught or faked. The woman who'd looked at him like he was just another bully in an expensive suit. The woman who might be the first person in 10 years who wasn't afraid of him. He picked up his phone, made a call. I need everything you can find on someone. Celine Vale, mid-20s, works at Obsidian Room. Lost her left leg probably 4 or 5 years ago. Military training, possibly special forces. Start with hospital records from major trauma centers, fire-related injuries. Then cross-reference with, he kept talking, giving orders, building a profile. Not realizing that across the city, Celine was doing the exact same thing, searching her memory for everything she'd ever heard about Damien Varelli. Weapons dealer, extortionist, killer, but also orphan, self-made, and ruthless but weirdly principled about certain things. Two people circling each other in the dark. Two people who'd just collided in a way that couldn't be undone. Two people standing at the edge of something neither of them had planned for. And in the space between them, in the rain-soaked city where violence was currency and weakness meant death, a clock was ticking down toward tomorrow night, 9 p.m., Obsidian Room, where Celine would have to decide if curiosity was worth the risk, if answers were worth the danger, if maybe, just maybe, the most dangerous thing she could do was walk back through those steel doors and find out what happened when two people who'd survived hell realized they recognized something in each other's eyes. The recognition of survivors, the recognition of fighters, the recognition that some battles weren't won with fists, they were won with choices. And tomorrow Celine Vale would have to make the hardest choice of her life. Walk away and stay invisible, or walk toward the fire one more time and see if she burned, or became something stronger. Celine didn't sleep. She lay in bed watching shadows crawl across the ceiling, listening to the rain hammer against glass that rattled in frames too old to hold tight anymore. The prosthetic leaned against the wall like a question she hadn't answered yet. The card sat on her nightstand, silver numbers catching whatever light bled through from the street. 9 p.m., Obsidian Room, 16 hours away. At 5 a.m., she gave up pretending and sat up. Her stump throbbed, angry from yesterday's shift and the fight, and the walking home in the cold. She massaged it with practiced efficiency, working through the pain the way physical therapists had taught her 4 years ago when they said she'd never walk normally again. They'd been wrong about that too. She attached the prosthetic, feeling the familiar pressure of the carbon fiber sleeve against her skin, the click of the lock mechanism engaging. Stood. Tested her weight. Everything held, everything always held. That was the problem with modern prosthetics. They were too reliable. Made you forget you were broken until someone pointed it out. Celine made coffee in a machine that wheezed like an asthmatic and stared out the window at a city waking up to another gray morning. Delivery trucks, early commuters, a homeless man pushing a shopping cart full of plastic bags. Normal life happening to normal people. She wasn't normal anymore. Hadn't been since the warehouse. The coffee tasted like burnt metal, but she drank it anyway, letting the caffeine sharpen edges that felt too soft this morning. She needed to think, needed to plan, needed to decide if she was actually stupid enough to walk back into Damien Varelli's world. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She stared at it for 3 rings before answering. Yeah. Miss Vale. The voice was smooth, professional, and completely emotionless. Not Damien, someone else. Mr. Varelli would like to confirm your attendance tonight at 9 p.m. I haven't decided yet. He's offering $50,000 for a 6-week consultation, training his security personnel in advanced close quarters combat. No weapons. Pure technique. Celine's grip tightened on the phone. $50,000. That was a year's salary at the Obsidian Room, more than enough to disappear again if she needed to. Start over somewhere Damien's reach didn't extend, if such a place existed. I'll think about it, she said. He needs an answer by noon. Then he'll have one by noon. She hung up, stood there holding the phone, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down like a physical thing. $50,000 to teach criminals how to fight better, to step into Damien's world voluntarily, to stop being invisible. Her reflection stared back from the window glass. 26 years old, hollow cheeks, dark circles under eyes that had seen too much, hair pulled back in a functional ponytail. Nothing special, nothing threatening. Until you looked closer, until you saw the scars on her knuckles from punching through broken glass to reach people trapped behind fire. Until you saw the way she held herself, balanced and ready, even standing still. Until you saw the thing living behind her eyes that didn't flinch anymore because it had already survived everything that should have killed it. Damien had seen that last night, had recognized it, and now he wanted to use it. Celine grabbed her jacket and left the apartment. The gym was 6 blocks away in a building that used to be a textile factory before the industry died and left corpses all over this part of the city. Now it housed a boxing club on the ground floor, artist studios on the second, and probably drug dealers on the third. Nobody asked questions. Perfect. She'd been training here for 3 months, early mornings when nobody else was around, just her and the heavy bags and the mirrors that showed her every mistake. The owner, an ex-Marine named Rita, with knuckles like tree roots and a face that looked like it had lost arguments with concrete, looked up from her coffee when Celine walked in. "You're here early, even for you." "Couldn't sleep," Rita grunted. She understood insomnia, understood a lot of things she never talked about. "Bag work or sparring?" "Bag." "You got blood on your knuckles yesterday? They healed?" Celine looked down at her hands, scabbed over but functional. "They're fine." "That wasn't a question about function, kid. That was a question about pain." "Same thing." Rita's eyes narrowed, but she didn't push, just gestured toward the heavy bags hanging from chains that looked older than both of them combined. "Wrap your hands first. I don't want you bleeding on my equipment." Celine wrapped her hands with practiced efficiency. White tape, figure 8 pattern, tight but not cutting circulation. She approached the nearest bag, a 200-pound monster covered in duct tape patches and sweat stains, and she started hitting, jab, cross, hook, each strike precise and controlled, building rhythm, finding the zone where thought disappeared and only motion remained. But today the zone wouldn't come. Her mind kept circling back to last night, to Damien's face when he hit the floor, to the look in his eyes when he stood up, to the card on her nightstand and the phone call and the decision hanging over her like a blade. She hit harder. The bag swung on its chain, groaning metal on metal. $50,000, 6 weeks. What could go wrong? Everything. Everything could go wrong. She'd spent 8 months being nobody, being invisible, being safe. One fight had destroyed that. And now Damien Varelli knew her name, knew she could fight, would soon know everything else if he dug deep enough. The warehouse, the fire, the 3 people she'd dragged out and the 2 she couldn't reach, the investigation afterward, the questions she'd refused to answer, the life she'd walked away from, all of it buried, all of it waiting to be found. Celine's fist connected wrong, angle off by 2 degrees, and pain shot through her wrist. She stopped, breathing hard, sweat dripping. Rita was watching from across the gym, coffee mug halfway to her lips. "You gonna tell me what's eating you?" Rita asked. "No." "Figured." Rita set down the mug. "But whatever it is, you're fighting it instead of the bag. That's how you break bones." Celine unwrapped her hands slowly, fingers aching. "Someone offered me a job." "Good money?" "Very good." But it's dangerous." Rita laughed, short and sharp. "Kid, you work at the Obsidian Room. Everything's dangerous. Question is whether the danger's worth the pay. That's not the question. Then what is? Celine looked at her hands, at the scars, at the evidence of choices she'd already made. Whether I want to stop hiding. Silence settled between them, heavy and understanding. Rita came over, moved slow like approaching a spooked animal. She studied Celine's face the way mechanics studied engines, looking for the broken part. Hiding's easy, Rita said finally. Hiding keeps you breathing, but it doesn't keep you living. Living gets you killed. Yeah, sometimes. Rita's expression softened in a way it rarely did. But staying hidden kills you slower, and that kind of death, she tapped Celine's chest, right over her heart. That kind you feel the whole way down. Celine wanted to argue, wanted to say survival was enough, that breathing counted as living if you did it long enough. But Rita's eyes said she'd already had this conversation with herself, and lost. Thanks for the session, Celine said quietly. Didn't charge you yet. Put it on my tab. She left before Rita could respond. Outside the rain had stopped, but the sky looked like it was gathering strength for round 2. Celine walked without direction, letting her feet choose turns while her mind circled the same decision over and over. $50,000. 6 weeks with Damien Varelli's people. Teaching killers how to kill better. Except that wasn't quite right, was it? The job offer was for defensive training, close quarters combat, the kind of thing that kept you alive when bullets stopped flying and fists started. Still violence, but defensive violence, the kind she'd learned when... No. Don't think about that. Don't think about the Corps, about the training, about the missions that took her to places that didn't exist on maps and taught her that the line between hero and monster was thinner than anyone wanted to admit. She'd left that world, had left it before it killed her, or turned her into something she couldn't recognize. The warehouse fire had just been the excuse she needed to walk away permanently, and now Damien Varelli was offering her a door back into violence. Different violence, maybe, but violence always found its level. Her phone buzzed again. 11 a.m., 1 hour until Damien's deadline. The text was from the same unknown number. Mr. Varelli requests your presence at Harlow Tower, penthouse, noon, to discuss terms personally. Not the Obsidian Room, his territory. Celine stopped walking, looked up. She was standing 3 blocks from Harlow Tower, the most expensive building in the city. 60 floors of glass and steel, where the top 10 floors belonged exclusively to Damien. Security tighter than most prisons. Cameras everywhere. Armed guards in suits that cost more than cars. Walking in there meant committing, meant stepping into the cage voluntarily. She should turn around, should go back to her apartment, should text back a polite refusal and find another job somewhere Damien's shadow didn't reach. Instead, she started walking toward the tower. Because Rita was right, hiding was killing her slowly. And maybe, there was something worse than danger. Maybe it was safety that cost everything. The lobby of Harlow Tower looked like it had been designed by someone who thought gold and marble were personality traits. Everything gleamed, everything reflected. Celine's boots squeaked on floors so polished they looked wet. The security desk was manned by 3 people who looked like they ate nails for breakfast and washed them down with gasoline. The woman in the center looked up as Celine approached. Name. Celine Vale. I'm expected. The woman typed something, waited. Her expression didn't change, but something shifted in her posture. ID. Celine handed over her driver's license. More typing, a phone call conducted in monosyllables. Finally a nod. Penthouse elevator. Far left. Code is 8473. Don't deviate from the hallway. Don't touch anything. Mr. Varelli will meet you in his office. Thanks. Wasn't being friendly, was giving orders. Celine took back her ID and walked toward the elevator bank. The penthouse elevator was different from the others. Smaller, faster. Required the code plus a keycard the security woman had given her. The doors closed with a hydraulic hiss, and suddenly she was ascending, fast enough to feel it in her stomach. 60 floors in 40 seconds. The doors opened onto a hallway that looked like a museum had mated with a fortress. Art on the walls that probably cost more than most people's houses. Cameras in every corner. And at the end of the hall, double doors made of dark wood with brass handles shaped like serpents. Celine walked forward, her prosthetic clicking softly on hardwood. The doors opened before she reached them. Damien stood there, backlit by floor-to-ceiling windows that showed the entire city spread out like a circuit board. He'd changed from last night. No suit, just black pants and a charcoal sweater that probably cost $1,000 but looked casual. His hair was still damp like he'd just showered. He looked more dangerous without the suit, more human. "You came," he said. "You noticed." A smile flickered across his face and died. "Come in." She stepped inside and the doors closed behind her with a solid thunk that sounded too much like a cell locking. The office was massive, minimal furniture, a desk that looked carved from a single piece of black stone, bookshelves full of volumes that actually looked red, and weapons, mounted on the walls like art. Knives, swords, a pair of antique pistols, even a crossbow that looked medieval and functional. Damien followed her gaze. Gifts. From people who wanted to stay alive. Generous of them. Fear makes people generous. He gestured to a pair of chairs near the windows. Celine sat in one, keeping her back to the glass because that's what amateurs did. Damien noticed and sat across from her, amusement touching his eyes. "You don't trust me," he said. "I don't know you." "Fair." He leaned back, studying her the way collectors studied rare things they wanted to own. 50,000 for 6 weeks. Training sessions 3 times a week, 2 hours each. You teach my security team how to fight like you did last night. Clean, efficient, real. That's not enough. Damien's eyebrows rose. Not enough money or not enough information? Both. 75,000. Celine didn't react, didn't blink, just held his gaze and waited. Damien laughed, surprised. "You're negotiating. Most people just take what I offer. Most people are scared of you. And you're not?" "I'm terrified." The honesty made him stop laughing. "But I'm more terrified of staying invisible forever." Something shifted in his expression. Recognition again, like he understood exactly what she meant. 100,000, he said quietly. "Final offer. But I want something else too." "What, Ho? I want to know your story. The real one. The fire. The leg. Everything." Celine's jaw tightened. "That's not part of the deal." "It is now." "Why?" Damien leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and for a moment he looked younger than his reputation, looked like someone still figuring out who he was supposed to be. "Because last night you did something nobody's done in 10 years, he said. "You looked at me like I was just another asshole with a big mouth. Not a crime boss, not a killer, just a drunk asshole who needed to be put in his place." He paused. "And then you did it. You put me down. In front of everyone." "You're angry." "I'm fascinated." The word hung between them like a live wire. "I've spent a decade building fear, making people see me as dangerous, untouchable, and you stripped that away in 30 seconds. I need to understand how." "I'm just a waitress who knows how to fight." "Bullshit." Damien's voice went hard. "I had you investigated last night, 6 different people. Best researchers money can buy. You know what they found?" Celine's heart rate spiked, but her face stayed neutral. "What?" "Almost nothing. Celine Vale appeared 8 months ago. Rented an apartment, got a job. No social media. No credit history before that. No employment records. No nothing." He stood up, started pacing. "It's like you didn't exist before 8 months ago. And people who don't exist are either running from something or hiding from someone. Maybe I just value privacy. Privacy doesn't leave that kind of void. Witness protection does, or black ops, or..." He stopped, turned to face her. "Or trauma so bad you had to erase yourself to survive it." The accuracy of that last one hit like a fist to the solar plexus. Celine stood up slowly. "I should go." "Wait. The job offer's withdrawn. I get it. You want information I won't give. We're done here. The job offer stands." Damien moved between her and the door. Not threatening, just present. "But I need to know if you're dangerous to me. To my people. I can't bring someone into my organization blind." "Then don't, Med." "I want to." The confession surprised them both. Celine studied his face, looking for the trap, the angle, the manipulation. Found nothing but genuine curiosity mixed with something that might have been respect. "Why?" she asked. Because you're the first person in years who's seen me as human instead of monster. His voice dropped. And I think maybe you're the first person who can teach me the difference. The words landed in the space between them, and neither knew what to do with them. Outside the windows, clouds were building again. The city looked small from up here, manageable, like you could reach down and rearrange the pieces however you wanted. Celine knew that was an illusion. Everything looked manageable from far enough away. I was military, she said finally. The words felt like glass coming up her throat. Special operations, the kind they don't talk about. 4 years active. I was good at it, too good. Started taking missions that... She stopped. Started again. Started doing things that felt right in the moment and wrong every night after. Damien didn't interrupt, just listened with an intensity that felt like weight. The warehouse fire happened during my terminal leave. I was already out, already trying to figure out who I was without the cores, without the missions. Then I saw smoke, heard screaming, and her hands clenched. I went in, because that's what I was trained to do, save people, extract assets, complete the mission. You saved 3 people, Damien said quietly. You did dig. I found the news reports. Warehouse fire, 5 casualties total, 3 survivors, hero unidentified, transported to Memorial Hospital with severe burns and traumatic amputation. He paused. That was you. Celine nodded once. The article said the hero refused interviews, disappeared from the hospital against medical advice. Police never identified them. I had reasons. I'm sure you did. Damien moved closer, not touching, but close enough she could see gold flecks in his dark eyes. The people you saved, they ever find you? Thank you? No. You want them to? No. The answer came fast and hard. I didn't do it for thanks. I did it because they were there and I could reach them. That's all. That's not all. Damien's voice was gentle now, probing. You could have stopped at 1, at 2, but you went back for the 3rd. The building was collapsing. You went back anyway. How do you know that? One of the survivors talked to press years later, said someone came back through flames for them, dragged them out while ceiling beams fell, lost their leg when debris pinned them down, shielding the survivor's body. Celine's throat tightened. She hadn't known that story made it to press, hadn't known anyone knew the details. That survivor has nightmares about it, Damien continued. Nightmares about someone screaming while fire ate them alive. Nightmares about being pulled free and looking back to see their rescuer trapped. Gone. Stop. Why? Because it's true? Because you're the hero in everyone else's story and the victim in your own? I said stop. Her voice cracked. Damien stopped, stepped back. The silence stretched until it ached. I'm sorry, he said finally. I shouldn't have pushed. Celine turned away, looking out the windows at a city that suddenly felt too small to hide in. You wanted to know my story. There it is. I used to kill people for my country. Then I almost died saving strangers, lost my leg, lost my career, lost everything I thought made me valuable, spent 4 years learning to walk again, 8 months learning to be nobody. She faced him again. Happy now? No. Damien's expression was complicated. But I understand better. Understand what? Why you fight like you've got nothing to lose, because you already lost it. He moved to his desk, pulled out a folder. This is the contract, 100,000, 6 weeks, 3 sessions per week, training my people. No questions about your past. No digging. You teach, you get paid, you leave. He held out the folder. Celine didn't take it. What's the catch? No catch, just... He hesitated. Just a request. Which is, if you're going to teach my people how to survive, I want to learn too. Damien's jaw tightened like the words cost him. I want you to teach me, personally, everything you know about real combat, not the street fighting bullshit I grew up with. Real technique. Why? Because last night I realized I've been winning fights through fear and numbers, not skill, and the first person who doesn't fear me, he gestured at her, puts me down in 30 seconds. That's a weakness I can't afford. Celine understood that logic, respected it even. But teaching Damien Varelli how to fight better felt like handing a loaded gun to someone already drowning in weapons. I need time to think, she said. You have until tonight, 9 p.m., Obsidian Room. Come if you're in. Don't if you're not. Either way, the offer expires at 9:15. That's not much time. I'm not a patient man, Celine. He said her name like he was testing how it fit in his mouth. And I don't like leaving things uncertain. You're either in my world or you're not. Choose. She took the folder. Not because she'd decided. Because she needed to read the details. See what she was actually agreeing to. Find the loopholes and the traps and the clauses that would bite her later. I'll read it, she said. That's all I ask. Damien walked her to the door, opened it himself instead of letting it swing automatic. A strange gesture of courtesy from a man whose reputation was built on brutality. Celine. He stopped her before she stepped into the hallway. For what it's worth, what you did in that warehouse, that took more courage than anything I've ever done. You don't know what you've done. I know it's never been selfless. The honesty in that hit different than she expected. She left without responding. The elevator ride down felt longer than the ride up. Celine stared at her reflection in the polished steel doors and saw someone she barely recognized anymore. Someone standing at a crossroads with no good options. Take the job. Step back into violence, into Damien's world, into the version of herself she'd tried to bury. Refuse the job. Stay invisible, stay safe, stay slowly dying from the inside out. Both choices felt like losing. The lobby was crowded now, lunch hour traffic flowing through in expensive suits and designer dresses. Celine moved through them like a ghost, clutching the folder, feeling the weight of decisions pressing down. She made it 2 blocks before someone grabbed her arm. Fast, professional. She spun, dropped her weight, ready to break the grip. Easy. The man from last night, the one with blood on his collar, now wearing a clean shirt but the same dead eyes. Just a message. From Damien? From me. He released her arm. I'm Marcus, head of Varelli Security. If you take this job, you report to me. Good to know. No, you don't understand. Marcus stepped closer, voice dropping. Damien sees something in you. I don't know what. Don't care. But I need you to understand something before you sign anything. I'm listening. Damien's changing. Last 6 months he's been different, questioning things, hesitating, making decisions that put us all at risk because he's trying to be, Marcus struggled with the word, better. And that's going to get people killed. Then quit. Can't. I owe him my life, literally, but I can warn you. His eyes were hard. Whatever you think you see in him, that hesitation, that humanity, it's new, it's fragile. And the second things go bad, the second his empire's threatened, the real Damien comes back. The one who built this organization on corpses and terror. That's the man you need to be ready for. Celine studied him. You telling me not to take the job? I'm telling you to go in with eyes open. Damien Varelli is dangerous because he's smart and ruthless and good at reading people. But he's most dangerous when he wants something, because he doesn't stop until he gets it or destroys it trying. And what does he want from me? Marcus looked at her like the answer should be obvious. Redemption. He thinks you can teach him how to be human again. He laughed, bitter. And maybe you can. But redemption comes with a price, usually paid in blood, usually someone else's. He walked away before she could respond. Celine stood there on the sidewalk while people flowed around her like water around stone. Everything Marcus said made sense. Everything Marcus said was probably true. And none of it changed the fact that $100,000 could buy her freedom, could let her start over again somewhere far from here with enough cushion to build something real. Or it could buy her 6 weeks inside Damien's world. 6 weeks to see if redemption was possible. 6 weeks to find out if Marcus was right. If the monster was just wearing a human mask. Or if the human was trying to claw free from the monster. She went home. Read the contract 3 times. Found no obvious traps. Standard non-disclosure. Payment schedule. Termination clauses that favored both parties. Clean language. Professional. Almost too clean. Like Damien had actually meant what he said about no catches. 8 p.m. she took a shower, put on clean clothes, black jeans, gray shirt, her good jacket, the one without stains. 8:30. She sat on her bed and stared at the contract, 8:45, she picked up a pen. 8:59, she was standing outside the obsidian room, contract signed in her jacket pocket, watching rain start to fall again. The door opened. Marco looked out, saw her, and his face went through 5 emotions in 2 seconds. "You're actually doing this," he said. "Apparently." "You know this is insane." "Yeah." "Damien Varelli destroys everything he touches." "Maybe." Celine stepped inside, rain dripping off her jacket. "Or maybe he just needs someone to show him how to build instead of burn." "And you think you're that person?" "No, but I think I'm desperate enough to try." Marco shook his head but stepped aside. The obsidian room was different tonight. Quieter. Less crowded. Like word had spread that something was happening and smart people had decided to be somewhere else. Damien sat in the center booth. Alone. No guards. No crew. Just him and a glass of whiskey he wasn't drinking. He looked up when Celine approached. Their eyes met, and something clicked into place that neither of them understood yet. "I'm in," Celine said. She pulled out the contract, set it on the table between them. Damien picked it up, scanned it, saw her signature. His hand shook slightly when he set it back down. "Why?" he asked quietly. "Because hiding is killing me, and you're offering me a reason to stop." "I'm offering you danger." "Same thing." Damien stood, extended his hand. Celine looked at it for a long moment. This was the point of no return. This was the moment where invisible became visible, where safety became risk, where Celine Vale stopped running and started fighting again. She took his hand. His grip was strong, warm, human. "Partners," Damien said. "Employer and contractor," Celine corrected. "For now." He smiled. She didn't. 'Cause she could feel it already. The shift, the pull, the gravity of decisions made that couldn't be unmade. Outside, thunder rolled across the city. And somewhere in the dark, Marcus watched through security cameras and wondered which of them would survive what came next. Because redemption required sacrifice. And sacrifice required blood. And blood always found its level. The question was whose would spill first. The first training session happened in a warehouse that smelled like rust and old violence. Damien's people stood in a loose semicircle, 15 of them, all men, all armed even though Celine had specified no weapons. They looked at her like she was a joke they hadn't gotten the punchline to yet. One-legged woman in workout clothes standing in front of killers who'd been doing this since before she could drive. Marcus stood off to the side, arms crossed, face unreadable. Damien stood next to him, watching. Celine walked to the center of the circle. Her prosthetic clicked against concrete that had seen too much blood to ever look clean again. "My name is Celine Vale," she said, voice level, clear. "For the next 6 weeks, I'm going to teach you how to not die when guns stop working and knives get dropped, and all you have left are your hands and whatever desperation feels like at 3 a.m. when someone's trying to kill you." One of the men laughed. Big guy, maybe 6'4", neck like a tree trunk. "And what makes you qualified to teach us anything, sweetheart?" Celine looked at him. "Step forward." "What?" "You heard me. Step forward. Let's see what you know." The man looked at his companions, grinned, stepped into the circle. "What's your name?" Celine asked. "Vincent." "Okay, Vincent. I want you to try to hit me, hard as you can, best shot." Vincent's grin widened. "You sure about that?" "Positive." He shrugged. "Wound up?" Threw a haymaker that had his full weight behind it. Celine wasn't there when it arrived. She'd slipped left, minimal movement, just enough to make him miss by 2 inches. His momentum carried him forward, and she was already behind him, foot hooked around his ankle, hand pushing his shoulder. Vincent hit the concrete face first. The sound echoed through the warehouse. Silence. Celine stepped back, hands at her sides. Lesson 1. Telegraphing. You wound up like you were throwing a baseball. Everyone in this room knew that punch was coming 3 seconds before it landed. In a real fight, 3 seconds gets you killed. Vincent pushed himself up, blood running from his nose. His face was red, but not from the fall. From humiliation. "That was luck," he said. "Prove it. Try again." He came at her faster this time. No wind-up, just aggression and rage, and 240 pounds of muscle. Celine used his momentum against him, pivoted on her prosthetic with perfect balance, and sent him stumbling past her into the wall. He spun around, breathing hard. Again, Celine said. Fuck you. Again. Vincent charged. This time Celine didn't just dodge. She intercepted, caught his wrist mid-swing, twisted, applied pressure to the joint in a way that made grown men scream, and dropped him to his knees. Lesson 2, she said quietly, still holding the wrist lock. Speed without control is just flailing. Control without speed is just posing. You need both. And right now you have neither. She released him. Vincent stayed on his knees, cradling his wrist, and something had changed in his eyes. The mockery was gone, replaced by caution, fear. Good. Celine addressed the full group. Anyone else want to test me? Get it out of your system now. Nobody moved. Smart. She began pacing, each step deliberate. You're all bigger than me, stronger, probably meaner, but size doesn't win fights. Violence does. And violence isn't about being the biggest or the strongest. It's about being willing to do what the other person won't. It's about finding the weakness and exploiting it before they find yours. She stopped pacing, looked at each of them in turn. In 6 weeks, I'm going to teach you how to break bones efficiently, how to escape holds, how to put someone down in under 5 seconds. But first, you need to unlearn everything you think you know about fighting, because most of what you know is wrong. One of the men raised his hand, younger than the others, maybe 25. Yeah, Celine said. What if we're already good fighters? Then you'll learn faster, or you'll learn that good isn't the same as effective. Damien stepped forward from where he'd been watching. Show them the difference. Celine looked at him. Between what? Good fighting and effective fighting. Use me. The warehouse went quiet again. Celine studied Damien's face, looking for the angle. You sure? Positive. My people need to see this, and I need to see what I'm paying for. Okay. Celine gestured him to the center. Come at me. Full speed. Don't hold back. Damien removed his jacket, handed it to Marcus, rolled his shoulders. He was sober today, alert. And when he came at her, there was no drunk sloppiness, just trained aggression and genuine skill. He was better than Vincent, faster, more controlled. His punches came in combinations that actually made sense. Jab to set up the cross, feint high, strike low. He'd been taught by someone who knew what they were doing. But Celine had been taught by people who knew what worked when dying wasn't optional. She let him chase her for 30 seconds, let him think he was close. Then she changed levels, shot low under his guard, and swept both his legs. Damien went down harder than Vincent had, but he didn't stay down. He rolled, came up in a crouch, and his eyes were bright now, excited. Again, he said. They went again. This time Damien lasted 45 seconds before Celine put him on his back with a throw that used his own momentum against him. And again, each time Damien got a little better, adapted a little faster, started reading her movements. After the 5th attempt, Celine called time. Damien sat on the concrete, breathing hard, sweat soaking through his shirt. But he was smiling, actually smiling. You're a natural learner, Celine said. I'm getting my ass kicked. Same thing. You're not making the same mistake twice. That's rare. She offered him her hand. He took it, pulled himself up. Their faces were close for a second. Close enough that Celine could see the gold flecks in his eyes again, could smell his cologne mixing with honest sweat. She stepped back. Professional distance. But something had shifted. The men had seen their boss get dropped 5 times and come back smiling, seen him treat it like learning instead of losing. Respect changed hands in that warehouse. Not for Damien, for Celine. The rest of the session went smoother. Celine walked them through basic principles. Balance, leverage, targeting, how to recognize when someone was trained versus when they were just violent, how to use prosthetics and injuries and perceived weaknesses as weapons instead of handicaps. By the end of 2 hours, even Vincent was taking notes. Damien approached her as people filtered out. That was impressive, he said. That was basics. Then I'm looking forward to advanced. He pulled an envelope from his jacket. First payment, $20,000. Contract says payment after each week. Celine took the envelope, felt the weight of cash that represented more than she'd made in 6 months at the Obsidian Room. Thank you. Don't thank me. You earned it. Damien hesitated. I want to hire you for private sessions too. The contract covers group training. I'll pay separately for one-on-one. How much? 5,000 per session, 2 sessions a week. Celine did the math. That was another 40,000 over 6 weeks. Total payout would be 140,000. Life-changing money. Disappearing money. Why? She asked. Because I need to be better than them. Damien gestured at his departing crew. If I'm going to lead, I can't be the weakest person in the room. You're not weak? I got dropped 5 times in 10 minutes. You got up 5 times. That's not weakness. That's stubbornness. Damien's expression softened. My father used to say stubbornness was just pride that refused to learn. Smart man. He was. Until someone put a bullet in him for being too smart. The words came out flat, empty. This business doesn't reward intelligence. It rewards ruthlessness. I've been ruthless for a decade. Maybe it's time to try smart. Celine wanted to tell him smart didn't survive in his world. Wanted to warn him that every step toward humanity was a step away from the protection that fear provided. But she'd taken his money, signed his contract, made her choice. Okay, she said, private sessions, but I picked the times and locations. Deal. They shook on it. Marcus appeared from the shadows like a ghost materializing. We have a problem. Damien's expression changed instantly, went from human to boss in half a second. What kind? Kozlov's crew. They hit one of our shipments an hour ago, took everything, 3 of our guys dead. The temperature in the warehouse dropped. Celine had heard the name Kozlov before. Russian syndicate, brutal, efficient, one of the few organizations in the city that could challenge Damien's empire directly. Where? Damien's voice was ice. South Docks, Warehouse 7. Survivors? 2. Both in the hospital. One's critical. Damien's hands clenched into fists. The man who'd been smiling 10 minutes ago was gone. What stood there now was something colder, harder, dangerous. Get everyone, full crew, we're hitting back tonight. He turned to Celine. Go home. This doesn't concern you. Damien, I said go home. His eyes were flat, dead. This is the part of my world you don't want to see. Trust me. Celine watched the transformation complete itself. Watched the human sink back into the monster. Marcus had been right. The real Damien was always waiting underneath. She left without arguing. Outside the warehouse, rain had started again. Celine walked 3 blocks before pulling out her phone and calling a number she hadn't used in 8 months. It rang 4 times. Vale. The voice was gravel and cigarettes and memory. Didn't think I'd hear from you again. I need information, Collins. Lieutenant Sarah Collins, Homicide Division, one of the only cops Celine trusted. They'd worked together on a task force years ago, before the warehouse, before everything. What kind of information? Damien Varelli, specifically his war with the Kozlov syndicate. Silence on the line. Then, Jesus Christ, Vale, tell me you're not mixed up with Varelli. I'm training his security team. You're what? Long story. I need to know how bad things are between him and Kozlov. Collins sighed. Deep and tired. It's bad. Getting worse. Kozlov's been pushing for months, taking territory, hitting shipments, trying to force Varelli into a full war. And Varelli's been, she paused, restraining himself, which is weird. Not like him. Usually he'd have burned Kozlov's operation to the ground by now. But he hasn't. No, and that's making him look weak. Other syndicates are starting to test boundaries, push limits. The whole underworld is watching to see if the king still has teeth. Celine's stomach tightened. What happens if they decide he doesn't? Open war. Every crew in the city will try to take a piece. Blood in the streets, civilian casualties. Everything the mayor's been trying to avoid for the past 5 years. Fuck. Yeah. Colin's voice went softer. Vale, whatever you're doing with Varelli, stop. Walk away. This thing's going to explode and I don't want you anywhere near it when it does. I signed a contract. Break it. Varelli won't come after you for backing out. He's got bigger problems. You don't know that. I know he's about to do something extremely stupid tonight, We've got reports of his crew mobilizing. Heavy weapons. They're going to hit back for that shipment. Hard. And when they do, Kozlov's going to respond. This is the domino that starts the avalanche. Celine closed her eyes. Where's the hit going down? I can't tell you that. Collins, I can't. That's operational intelligence. If I leak it and people die, that's on me. People are going to die anyway. Collins was quiet for a long moment. North Industrial District, warehouse complex Kozlov uses as a front. We've had it under surveillance for weeks, but can't touch it without a warrant. If Varelli hits it, if he proves what's in there, we might finally have cause to move. Unless he kills everyone first. That's the concern, yeah. Celine thanked her and hung up, stood there in the rain trying to decide what her responsibility was here. She was training Damien's people to defend themselves, not to attack, not to wage war, but the money in her pocket came from the same violence she was trying to ignore. And Damien was about to cross a line that Marcus said he'd been avoiding, about to become the monster again because hesitation looked like weakness and weakness invited death. She should go home, should stay out of it, should cash the check and pretend she didn't care what happened next. Her feet started moving toward the industrial district. She arrived an hour before Damien did. The warehouse complex was exactly what Collins described. 3 buildings, chain-link fence, single guard at the gate who looked bored until Celine approached from the shadows and put him to sleep with a chokehold that cut blood flow without killing. She dragged him into the bushes, zip-tied his hands with a strap from her bag, gagged him with his own shirt. Then she entered the complex. The first warehouse was empty. Storage containers and cobwebs. The second warehouse was where the operation lived. Celine crouched on a catwalk above the main floor, watching through gaps in the railing. 12 men, all armed, all Russian based on the conversation she could half hear. They were packing crates with product, white bricks that could only be one thing, cocaine. Millions of dollars worth. This wasn't just a warehouse, this was Kozlov's distribution hub, and Damien was about to burn it down. Celine checked her phone. 10:30 p.m. If Collins was right, Damien's crew would hit around midnight when shipments normally moved out. She had 90 minutes. To do what? Warn Damien? Tell him it was a trap? Because it felt like a trap, too easy, too obvious. Or warn Kozlov? Let him know attack was coming so he could prepare. Neither option felt right. Both felt like picking sides in a war she didn't want to fight. She was still debating when the door exploded inward. Not midnight, not 90 minutes. Now. Damien's crew came through like a hurricane with guns. Automatic fire tore through the warehouse, muzzle flashes strobing the darkness into freeze frames of violence. The Russians returned fire. Chaos erupted. Celine pressed herself flat on the catwalk, bullets pinging off metal around her. Below, men screamed and died and killed and bled. She saw Damien enter through the smoke, saw him move with brutal efficiency, putting down anyone who pointed a weapon his direction. No hesitation, no mercy. This was the real Damien, the one Marcus warned her about, the one who'd built an empire on corpses. The firefight lasted 3 minutes. When it ended, 8 Russians were dead. 4 of Damien's people were down. The warehouse looked like a war zone. Damien stood in the center, breathing hard, guns still raised. "Clear the product," he shouted. "Everything. We take it all. Send Kozlov a message." His crew moved to obey. Celine knew she should stay hidden, should wait until they left, should never reveal she was here. But then she saw it. The tripwire. Thin. Almost invisible. Running from the main crate stack to a device mounted on the wall. A bomb. Big enough to take out the entire warehouse and everyone in it. Kozlov hadn't been storing product here. He'd been baiting a trap, and Damien had walked right into it. Celine moved without thinking, vaulted over the catwalk railing, dropped 15 feet to the concrete floor, rolled to absorb impact, came up running. "Stop!" she screamed. Damien spun, gun coming up to target her automatically. He froze when he saw her face. "Celine, what the fuck? Don't touch the crates. It's wired. The whole place is wired." Everyone stopped moving. Marcus appeared from the smoke, weapon raised. "How do you know?" "Because I can see it." Celine pointed at the tripwire. "Right there, connected to that wall unit. That's an explosive device. You move those crates, we all die." Damien looked where she was pointing, saw it, His face went white. "Everybody out," he said quietly. "Now, leave everything. Just get out." His crew didn't argue, moved toward the exits fast. Marcus grabbed Damien's arm. "We need to go." "I'm right behind you." Marcus left. It was just Celine and Damien now, standing in a warehouse full of cocaine and explosives. "You shouldn't be here," Damien said. "Neither should you." "This is my business. This is suicide." Celine moved closer, careful not to disturb anything. "Kozlov set you up. This whole thing was bait. You come in, take the product, trigger the bomb. Everyone dies. Your crew, your reputation, your empire, gone." Damien stared at the crates like they were a puzzle he couldn't solve. "How did you know to come here?" "I didn't. I just—" Celine struggled for words. "I had a bad feeling, called a contact, found out where the hit was going down. Got here early." "Why?" "Because I didn't want you to do something stupid." "Too late for that." Damien's laugh was bitter. "I just walked my best people into a death trap because I was too angry to think straight." "But you're walking out. That's what matters." "Is it?" He looked at her finally, really looked, and his eyes were haunted. "You know what I was going to do? I was going to burn this whole place down, send a message written in ashes. That's who I am, Celine. That's the man you took money from." "I know who you are." "Do you?" "Because I'm starting to wonder if I do." The moment stretched between them, fragile and dangerous. Then Celine's instinct screamed. She grabbed Damien's arm. "We need to move, now." "Why?" The door they'd come through slammed open. Kozlov entered with 20 men, all armed, all wearing expressions that said they'd been expecting this. "Damien Virelli." Kozlov's accent was thick, Russian, cold. "You are predictable man, angry man, stupid man." Damien's hand went to his gun. Kozlov's men raised their weapons. "I would not do that," Kozlov said. "You pull gun, my men shoot. You die. Your pretty friend dies. Nobody wins." Celine calculated odds. 20 armed men versus 2, one of whom was her. No winning this, only surviving. "Let her go," Damien said. "This is between us." Kozlov looked at Celine with interest. "Ah, the woman who beat you. I hear stories, very entertaining stories." He smiled. "But no, she stays. Because I want to know something." "What?" "I want to know why Damien Virelli brings his combat trainer to warehouse raid." Kozlov stepped closer. "Unless she is not just trainer, unless she is something else, something more important." The implication hung in the air like smoke. Celine's mind raced. Kozlov thought she mattered to Damien personally, thought she was leverage. He wasn't completely wrong. "She's nobody," Damien said. Just an employee. Wrong place, wrong time." "No." Kozlov shook his head. "Nobody does not look at Damien Virelli the way she looks at you, like she is worried, like she cares." He gestured to his men. "Bring them both. We have much to discuss." The men moved forward. Celine counted them, tracked positions, calculated angles. She could maybe take 3 down before they shot her. Maybe 4 if she was lucky. But 20 was impossible. Damien caught her eye, shook his head slightly. "Don't fight. Not yet." They were zip-tied and disarmed, marched out of the warehouse into the rain, shoved into the back of a van that smelled like diesel and old blood. The doors slammed shut. Darkness. Selena's wrists ached where the plastic bit into skin. Her prosthetic pressed awkwardly against her leg, but her mind was working through scenarios. Kozlov wanted something, wanted leverage, wanted to break Damien, and he thought Celine was the way to do it. The van drove for 20 minutes. Stopped. Doors opened. They were dragged out into a basement that looked like it had witnessed too many final moments. Concrete walls, drain in the floor, tools hanging on the walls that weren't for construction. Celine had been in rooms like this before, in other countries, for other reasons. She knew what they meant. Kozlov entered, removing his jacket carefully. "Damien Virelli, the king, the legend, sitting in my basement like common criminal. How times change." "What do you want?" Damien's voice was steady despite the situation. "Want? I want many things. I want your territory, your operations, your empire." Kozlov pulled up a chair. sat backward on it, arms crossed over the back. But more than that, I want you to understand something. You have been weak, soft. For months you hesitate. You negotiate. You try to be, what is word? Civilized. And this makes you vulnerable. I'm not weak. No. Then why is Celine Vale still breathing? Kozlov smiled. I know about Warehouse Fire, about the people she saved, about her military record, about everything she is trying to hide. You think I do not research? Think I do not prepare? Celine's blood went cold. What are you talking about? Damien looked at her, confused. Kozlov's smile widened. Oh, you do not know. How delicious! He stood, walked to Celine, grabbed her face. She jerked away, but his grip was iron. Tell him, Celine Vale, tell him what you really did before Warehouse Fire. Tell him about the missions, the kills. I don't know what you're talking about. Liar. Kozlov released her, pulled a folder from his jacket, threw it at Damien's feet. Read. Damien couldn't pick it up with his hands tied, but he could see the photos spilling out. Pictures of Celine in uniform, in tactical gear, standing over bodies in countries that weren't supposed to have American soldiers. His face went from confused to shocked to something harder to read. She is not just soldier, Kozlov said. She is killer. Black ops. The kind that makes people disappear. She has more blood on her hands than you do, Damien. More than me. More than anyone in this city. And you bring her into your organization. Trust her. Pay her. He laughed. You stupid, stupid man. Celine's throat closed. Everything she'd buried, everything she'd run from, exposed in a basement in front of the one person she'd started to think might understand. Damien looked at her. His expression was unreadable. Is it true? He asked quietly. Celine wanted to lie, wanted to deny it, wanted to explain that those missions were different, that she'd been following orders, that she'd left that life behind. But the photos didn't lie. Yes, she whispered. How many? What? How many people did you kill? The question landed like a physical blow. Celine's jaw tightened. I don't know, stopped counting. Something flickered across Damien's face. Pain, betrayal, recognition. You lied to me, he said. I didn't. You said you were a soldier, that you saved people. You never mentioned you killed them too. It's complicated. No. His voice went hard. It's actually very simple. You spent weeks making me feel like a monster for the things I've done. Looking at me like I was broken and violent and wrong. Meanwhile, you've got a body count that makes mine look amateur. The words cut deeper than Celine expected. Because he was right. She had judged him, had looked down on his violence while ignoring her own. Those were sanctioned operations, she said. Legal kills. Authorized by who? Your government? The same government that swears it doesn't do black ops? Damien's laugh was ugly. At least I'm honest about what I am. I don't hide behind flags and uniforms and call it patriotism. Kozlov watched them tear into each other with obvious pleasure. Beautiful, you see? This is why weakness destroys empires. You let her in, let her make you soft, and now you see truth. She is just like us, just like you. A killer pretending to be something better. Celine wanted to argue, wanted to defend the difference between sanctioned violence and criminal violence. But in this basement, staring at photos of people she'd killed in the name of national security, the distinction felt thin, felt like the lie she'd been telling herself for 4 years. Kozlov pulled out a knife. Long. Serrated. The kind designed to cause maximum pain. So now we come to business. He tested the blade against his thumb, drew blood, smiled. Damien, I am going to hurt Celine Vale, badly, and you are going to watch. And when you are ready to give me what I want, when you are ready to sign over your territories and operations and empire, I will stop. Go fuck yourself. I expected this answer. Kozlov moved toward Celine. We start with fingers, then toes, then more interesting places. By the end, you will beg me to let you surrender. They always do. Celine's heart rate spiked, but her mind went cold. Clear. Because she'd been in this situation before, had been captured, tortured, broken. And she'd survived by going to a place inside herself where pain couldn't reach, by becoming something other than human, by becoming the weapon they'd trained her to be. Kozlov grabbed her hand, positioned the knife against her pinky finger. Last chance, Damien. Save her or watch her bleed. Damien's face was a mask, showing nothing. Celine looked at him, met his eyes, and something passed between them that Kozlov couldn't see. An understanding, a decision. Do what you have to do, Damien said to Kozlov. But you're not getting my empire. Kozlov shrugged. Your choice. He started cutting. Pain exploded through Celine's hand, but she didn't scream, didn't give him the satisfaction, just locked her jaw and breathed through it, and found that cold place where she'd survived worse. Because this wasn't the first time someone had cut her. Wasn't even close. And if she could survive a building collapsing on her while fire ate her alive, she could survive this. She could survive anything. The question was whether Damien could. Whether he'd break before she did. Whether the humanity she'd seen in him was strong enough to withstand watching her suffer. Or whether the monster would come back. And if it did, everyone in this basement was dead, including her. Kozlov worked slow, methodical, each cut precise, drawing maximum pain for minimum damage. Professional. Celine's vision started to gray at the edges, but she kept breathing, kept finding that center where flesh was just meat, and pain was just signal, and survival was all that mattered. 10 minutes. 15. Her hand was ruined, blood pooling on concrete, running toward the drain, and Damien hadn't broken. Sat there watching with eyes like stones, showing nothing. Kozlov finally stepped back, frustrated. You are tougher than you look, Miss Vale, but we have only started. The next hour will be much worse. He moved toward the tool wall, selected pliers. Celine's breath hitched despite her control, because she knew what pliers meant, knew what came next, and even the cold place inside her had limits. Wait. Damien's voice cut through the basement like a blade. Kozlov turned. Yes? I'll give you what you want. The territories? The operations? All of it. Just stop hurting her. Victory flashed across Kozlov's face. Finally, the great Damien Varelli breaks. I'm not broken. I'm making a deal. Damien's eyes met Celine's. Let her go, unharmed. Get her medical attention, and I'll sign whatever you want. No. Celine's voice came out hoarse but firm. Don't do it. This isn't your choice. It's your empire. Everything you built. Don't throw it away for what? For you? Damien's expression softened despite the circumstances. You came to that warehouse to save me. Risked everything. Why would I do less for you? The words hung between them. Kozlov watched with narrowed eyes. This is very touching. But I think perhaps I was right. She is not just employee, she is something more. She's someone who didn't deserve this, Damien said. Now, do we have a deal or not? Kozlov considered. I want it in writing, contracts, legal documents, signed by you, witnessed by my lawyers. Fine. Set it up. And during setup, she stays here, with me. As insurance, you do not change mind. No, she goes to a hospital, now, or the deal's off. Kozlov's eyes hardened. You are not in position to make demands. Neither are you. My empire's worth millions. You want it? You play by my rules. Celine goes to a hospital, gets treated. Once she's stable, we sign papers. Otherwise, you get nothing but a war you can't win. The standoff stretched. Celine could see Kozlov calculating, weighing options, trying to find the angle. Okay, he said finally. Hospital. But my men watch her. Any trick, any escape attempt, and I kill her and you both lose. Agreed. Kozlov gestured to his men. Get her cleaned up. Take her to memorial. Private room. Guard the doors. They cut Celine's zip ties. Her ruined hand throbbed with each heartbeat. She could barely stand. Damien was still tied, still kneeling on concrete. He looked at her one last time. I'm sorry, he said. For what? For not seeing you clearly. For judging you. For... His voice broke slightly. For getting you into this. You didn't get me into anything. I walked in myself. Still, I'm sorry. Celine wanted to tell him it was okay, that she understood, That maybe they were both just broken people trying to figure out how to be something other than weapons. But Kozlov's men were dragging her toward the stairs, and Damien was watching her leave with eyes that looked like he was watching her die. And maybe he was, because the woman who'd walked into that warehouse wasn't coming back. That woman had believed she could be more than her past, had believed redemption was possible, had believed Damien could change and she could help, and maybe they could both find something better than violence. But her blood was draining into that basement floor. Her hand was destroyed. Her secrets were exposed. And the only thing she had left was the cold place where survival lived. The place where Celine Vale didn't exist. Where only the weapon remained. They threw her in the back of another van. She lay there on cold metal, cradling her ruined hand, feeling consciousness slip. The last thought she had before darkness took her was simple and terrible. To survive what came next, she'd have to become exactly what she'd been running from. She'd have to stop being Celine Vale and become the killer Kozlov's photos proved she'd always been. The monster Damien now knew existed behind her eyes, the weapon that didn't hesitate, didn't feel, didn't care who bled as long as it wasn't her. And somewhere in the dark, that weapon stirred, stretched, smiled, because it had been waiting 4 years to come home. Celine woke to fluorescent lights burning holes in her retinas, and the smell of disinfectant trying to hide the stench of sickness underneath. Hospital. Memorial, if Kozlov had kept his word. Her right hand was wrapped in gauze, thick enough to look like a club. Pain radiated from it in waves that made her teeth ache. 2 men sat by the door. Russians. Armed bulges under cheap suits. They looked bored until she moved, then their eyes sharpened like predators noticing prey was awake. "Don't try anything stupid," the one on the left said. Accent thick, face scarred. Celine didn't respond, just cataloged details. Window behind her, 4th floor based on the view. Door 15 feet away. 2 guards, both carrying, probably Makarovs based on the bulge pattern. IV in her left arm. Catheter. Hospital gown. No clothes. No prosthetic. They'd taken her leg. Smart. Hard to run with one leg and a destroyed hand, but not impossible. The doctor came in an hour later, young, nervous, kept glancing at the guards like he knew exactly what kind of patient he was treating. "Miss Vale," he said quietly. "I'm Dr. Chen. I treated your hand. You lost 2 fingers, the pinky and ring finger on your right hand. The cuts were clean enough that we were able to close them properly, but there will be significant scarring and loss of dexterity." "Will I regain grip strength?" Her voice came out hoarse. "Eventually. With physical therapy, maybe 70% of what you had before." 70%. She'd worked with worse. "When can I leave?" Dr. Chen looked uncomfortable. "You've lost a lot of blood. You need at least 48 hours of observation." "I don't have 48 hours." "Miss Vale, when can I leave?" The doctor glanced at the guards. Back to Celine. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. "If you sign an AMA discharge, you can leave whenever you want, against medical advice. But I strongly recommend, get me the forms." 20 minutes later, she was dressed in clothes one of the guards brought. Black pants, gray shirt, her own jacket, still stained with blood from the basement. They'd cleaned her prosthetic and returned it along with her boots. The scarred guard watched her attach the prosthetic with interest. "You are a tough woman. Most people scream more." Celine didn't dignify that with a response. Just stood, tested her weight, and nodded at the door. "Let's go." They drove her back to the basement. Different route this time. Longer. Like they were checking to see if anyone followed. Nobody did. Kozlov was waiting when they arrived. He looked pleased. "Ah, Celine Vale returns. How is the hand?" "Functional. Good. You will need it for what comes next." He gestured to a table where documents were spread out like a surgical kit. "Damien has been very cooperative. He has signed everything I asked. His territories, his operations, his accounts, all transferring to my organization over the next 30 days. Celine looked for Damien. Found him in the corner, still zip-tied, sitting against the wall. His eyes met hers and something passed between them that the Russians couldn't intercept. He looked exhausted, beaten down, but not broken. Not yet. "So what now?" Celine asked Kozlov. "Now? Now we celebrate." Kozlov smiled. And then I kill you both. Cannot have loose ends, you understand. Business is business. The casual way he said it made Celine's blood run cold. That wasn't the deal, she said.
Deal was I stop hurting you if Damien signs papers. He signed. I stopped. Deal complete. Kozlov shrugged. But I never promised you live. That would be stupid. You are both too dangerous to leave breathing. The guards around the room tensed, hands moving toward weapons. Celine calculated odds again. Still terrible, but slightly better than before.
Because her prosthetic had a feature the Russians didn't know about. A pressure release in the ankle joint that, if triggered correctly, could pop the lower half free. Turn it into a club, weighted, carbon fiber, hard enough to crack skulls. She'd installed it herself 3 years ago. For situations exactly like this. When? Damien's voice was flat. When what? Kozlov turned to him. When do you kill us? Ah, direct question. I appreciate this. Kozlov checked his watch. In approximately 1 hour, I have business associates arriving to witness transfer of your empire. After they confirm everything is legitimate, you both become loose ends to tie up. Quick, professional, almost painless. Almost. Kozlov's smile widened. I am not monster, but I'm also not saint. You will suffer a little for making me work so hard. Damien nodded slowly like he'd expected this. Can I ask a favor? You can ask. I may not grant. Let me talk to Celine. Alone. 5 minutes. Before you kill us. Kozlov considered this. Why? Because I want to apologize. For getting her killed. For dragging her into my world. She deserves that much. The manipulation in Damien's voice was subtle, playing to Kozlov's ego, making him feel magnanimous, powerful enough to grant final requests. It worked. 5 minutes, Kozlov said. But my men stay in the room. You try anything, they shoot you both immediately. Understood? Understood. Kozlov gestured and 2 guards dragged Damien to his feet, shoved him toward the corner where Celine stood. They kept weapons trained on both of them. Damien stopped 3 feet from Celine. Their eyes met. And in that moment, years of training activated in Celine's mind. Reading micro-expressions, body language, the subtle shifts that meant someone was about to move. Damien's left eyebrow twitched. Their old signal from training sessions, the one that meant ready. Celine's breath steadied. Damien spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. I'm sorry I brought you into this. Sorry I trusted the wrong people. Sorry I... He never finished the sentence because Celine moved. Dropped to one knee, triggered the pressure release on her prosthetic, and the lower half popped free. She caught it midair, spun, and swung it like a bat directly into the nearest guard's temple. The crack of carbon fiber meeting skull echoed through the basement. The guard dropped. Damien was already moving. Despite zip-tied hands, he threw himself sideways into the second guard, using his full body weight as a weapon. They crashed into the wall together. Gunfire erupted. Celine rolled left, came up behind a support pillar as bullets chewed concrete where she'd been standing. Her hand screamed pain, but adrenaline was louder. She still had the prosthetic leg, still had options. The basement descended into chaos. Damien had managed to get the second guard's gun despite tied hands. Was firing one-handed, wildly, keeping people's heads down. Celine counted shots, calculated positions, waited for the reload. When it came, she moved. Burst from cover, prosthetic legs swinging, caught another guard across the knees. Bone snapped. He went down screaming. She grabbed his weapon. Makarov. 8 rounds. Safety off. Started firing. 2 shots center mass. Drop and move. Don't stay still. 3 shots. 4. 5. Bodies falling. Somewhere Damien was shouting, but she couldn't hear words anymore. Just gunfire and screams and the sound of her own heartbeat drowning everything else. 6 shots. 7. 1 round left. Kozlov had disappeared. Smart. Let his men die while he escaped. The shooting stopped. Silence crashed down like a building collapsing. Celine stood in the center of carnage, breathing hard, covered in blood that wasn't all hers. Her destroyed hand hung useless. Her leg was gone, just the upper socket remaining. She balanced on one leg, gun raised, searching for targets. Found Damien instead. He was leaning against the wall, zip ties cut somehow, holding a weapon he'd taken from a dead guard. Blood ran from a cut above his eye. His shirt was torn, but he was breathing, alive. Their eyes met across the basement. "You good?" he asked. "No, you?" "Not even close." Footsteps above them, running, more men coming, Kozlov's reinforcements. "We need to move," Celine said. "Can you walk?" She looked down at her missing prosthetic, at the socket and the stump beneath. "I can hop. Not fast. Not far." Damien crossed to her, bent down, and before she could protest, he'd grabbed her prosthetic from where it had fallen. "Hold still!" He reattached it, hands surprisingly gentle despite the urgency. The mechanism clicked back into place. Celine tested her weight, held. "Thanks. Thank me when we're not dying." They moved toward the stairs. Damien first, weapon raised. Selena behind, covering their six with the last round in her Makarov. The stairwell was clear, too clear. Trap. Celine grabbed at Damien's shoulder. "Wait. What?" "It's too easy. Kozlov wouldn't just leave the exit unguarded." "Maybe he's panicking." Gunfire from above answered that question. They both ducked back into the basement as bullets tore through the stairwell. "Okay," Damien said. "Not panicking. What's plan B?" Celine scanned the basement, found what she was looking for. "There, service tunnel. Old building like this has to connect to the city sewers." "You want to go into the sewers? You want to die in this basement?" Damien looked at the tunnel entrance, dark, narrow, probably full of rats and worse. "Fair point." They ran. "Well?" Damien ran. Celine hobbled as fast as her prosthetic allowed. Pain shot through her stump with each impact, but she pushed through it. Pain meant alive. Alive meant options. The tunnel was exactly as terrible as expected. Low ceiling, water ankle deep, and smelling like decay. Pipes overhead dripping something Celine didn't want to identify. Behind them, shouting, Russians discovering the escape route. "Faster," Damien urged. "I'm going as fast as I can." He grabbed her arm. "I'm going to carry you." "Don't." He didn't wait for permission, just scooped her up in a fireman's carry and started running. Celine's ruined hand screamed, but she bit down on the pain and kept her remaining weapon ready. The tunnel branched. "Which way?" Damien asked. Celine tried to orient, think, city layout. Where were they? Industrial district. That meant left toward downtown, more exits. Damien went left. The tunnel opened into a larger chamber, junction point where multiple sewers met, ladder on the far wall leading up to a manhole cover. "There," Celine pointed. Damien set her down, started climbing. Celine covered the tunnel entrance, last round chambered, finger on the trigger. Russians appeared, 3 of them, all armed. Celine fired. Click. Misfire. Fuck. She threw the useless gun at the nearest Russian's face. He ducked. She launched herself forward despite the pain, despite the missing fingers, despite everything telling her this was suicide. Closed the distance before they could shoot. Got inside their range where guns became liabilities. Drove her elbow into the first one's throat. Crushed windpipe. He went down choking. The second one swung his weapon like a club. Celine caught it with her ruined hand. Agony exploded, but she didn't let go. Used the momentum to pull him off balance, swept his legs. He fell. She stomped on his temple. Didn't check if he stayed down. The third Russian had her cold. Gun raised, finger tightening, a shot rang out. The Russian's head snapped back. He fell. Celine looked up. Damien stood at the top of the ladder, smoking barrel pointed down. "Move!" She climbed. Her prosthetic slipped on wet metal rungs, but she forced herself upward. 1 rung, 2, 3. Damien grabbed her arm when she got close enough, hauled her up through the manhole into rain, street level, night, freedom. They were in an alley between buildings, city noise all around, cars, people, normal life happening while they bled and ran. Damien replaced the manhole cover. "We need to disappear, now. Kozlov will have people everywhere." "I know a place," Celine said. "Where?" "Rita's gym. She owes me. Won't ask questions." "That's 6 blocks. Then we better move." They did. Damien kept Celine upright when her leg threatened to give out. She kept moving despite everything screaming at her to stop. They stayed to alleys and shadows,
avoided cameras, moved like ghosts through a city that didn't know it was hosting a war. Rita's gym appeared like salvation after the longest 6 blocks of Celine's life. Damien pounded on the door.
Rita opened it with a baseball bat in her hands and murder in her eyes. What the? Celine? I need help. Rita took one look at the blood, the injuries, the desperation, and stepped aside. Get in. They stumbled inside. Rita locked the door behind them, flipped the close sign, drew the blinds. What happened? She asked. Long story, Celine managed before her legs gave out. Damien caught her, lowered her to the floor. Rita knelt beside them. You're both bleeding, badly. I'm calling an ambulance. No, Damien's voice was sharp. No hospitals, no cops, no official anything. Rita looked at him, really looked. Her expression changed. You're Damien Varelli. Yeah. And you brought war to my gym. I brought someone who needs help. The war followed. Rita's jaw tightened. She looked at Celine. This true? You with him now? Celine wanted to deny it, wanted to say it was just a job, just a contract. But lying took energy she didn't have. Yeah, she whispered. Rita stood, paced, came back. Okay, here's how this works. I help you, patch you both up, give you a safe place for a few hours. But then you leave, and you never come back. And if anyone asks, I never saw you. Deal? Deal, Damien said. Rita pulled out a first aid kit that looked military grade. Shirt off, both of you. Let me see the damage. The next hour was pain and antiseptic, and Rita's surprisingly gentle hands cleaning wounds that should have required surgery. She worked in silence, efficient and professional, like she'd done this before. Probably had. Celine's hand got wrapped properly. Her stump got checked for damage. Her various cuts and bruises got addressed. Damien had taken a bullet through his shoulder, through and through, clean. Rita packed it, bandaged it, told him he was lucky it missed the bone.
Lucky, Damien repeated flatly. Right. When Rita finished, she sat back and looked at them both. You need to tell me what's happening, not details, just enough that I know if I'm about to have Russians kicking my door down. Celine and Damien exchanged glances. Damien spoke. I signed away my empire to a Russian syndicate boss under duress. He was supposed to let us go afterward. Instead, he decided to kill us both. We escaped. Now he's hunting us. And your plan is what? Hide here forever? Our plan is to survive the next 12 hours. After that, he shrugged. We'll figure it out. Rita stood, went to a locked cabinet, came back with 2 handguns and ammunition, set them on the floor between Celine and Damien. If they come, she said, you defend yourselves. But you do it outside. I'm not having shootouts in my gym. Clear? Clear, Celine said. Rita nodded. There's a cot in the back office. Couch in the break room. Get some rest. You both look like death. She left them alone. Celine and Damien sat on the gym floor, backs against the wall, weapons within reach. Neither spoke for a long time. Finally, Damien broke the silence. Thank you. For what? For coming to that warehouse. For warning me about the bomb. For... He gestured vaguely at everything. For not leaving me in that basement. You did the same for me. After I got you tortured. After my weakness got you hurt. That wasn't weakness. Celine looked at him. That was you choosing not to let someone die for your empire. That's the opposite of weak. I lost everything tonight. Signed it all away. 10 years of building and I just... His voice cracked. I just gave it up. You didn't give it up. You traded it. For my life. For both our lives. Was it worth it? The question hung heavy. Celine thought about her answer carefully. I don't know, she said honestly. But I know you made a choice most people in your position wouldn't make. You chose life over power, humanity over empire. Maybe that makes you weak in this world. Or maybe it makes you the first person to figure out how to be strong in a different way. Damien looked at her, and something in his expression shifted, softened. I meant what I said in the basement. I'm sorry. For judging you. For acting like your past was worse than mine when really we're both just... Killers pretending to be people? Celine finished. Yeah. Maybe. Or maybe we're people who killed and now we're trying to figure out who we are without the violence. You think that's possible? I think we won't know unless we try.
They sat in silence again, but it felt different now, less heavy. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. The city continued its endless cycle of violence and survival. Damien's phone buzzed. He pulled it out, read the screen. His expression went dark. "What?" Celine asked. "Marcus. He's still alive. Says he's coming here. Says he has information. Could be a trap." "Could be. But Marcus has never betrayed me, even when it would have been smart to." 20 minutes later, Marcus appeared at the back door. Rita let him in after Damien vouched for him. Marcus looked like he'd been through hell, face bruised, arm in a makeshift sling, but his eyes were sharp. "You're alive," he said to Damien. "That's something." "What happened?" Damien asked. "Kozlov's men hit our safe houses. All of them, simultaneously. They knew every location, every code, everything." Marcus's jaw tightened. "We lost 30 people. Maybe more. The ones who survived scattered." Celine felt the weight of that number. 30 lives ended because Damien had tried to change, had tried to be better. "There's more," Marcus continued. "Kozlov's claiming you signed everything over voluntarily. Has documents, witnesses. He's telling the other syndicates you retired, that you're done, that anyone who works with you now is working against him. He's consolidating," Damien said quietly. "Faster than that. He's eliminating. Every business you controlled, every operation, every connection, he's either absorbing it or destroying it. By morning, the Varelli Empire won't exist." The words settled like ash. Damien stood, walked to the window, stared out at the rainy city. "So that's it then," he said. "I lost." "Not yet," Marcus said. "What do you mean?" "The contracts you signed, they're not valid yet. They require a 30-day transition period and verification by a neutral third party. That's built into the framework to prevent exactly this kind of hostile takeover." Marcus pulled out a folder. "I have copies. The originals are with Kozlov, but these copies prove the timeline. If we can prove you signed under duress, if we can get to the neutral arbitrator before Kozlov does, we can invalidate everything." Celine's mind raced. "Who's the arbitrator?" "Victor Chen, Chinese syndicate boss. Neutral territory. He arbitrates disputes between organizations to prevent full-scale wars." "And you think he'll listen?" Damien asked. "I think he'll listen to evidence, to proof, to witnesses." Marcus looked at Celine. "To testimony from someone Kozlov tortured to force your compliance." Understanding crashed down. They needed Celine to testify, to show her injuries, to tell the story of the basement, to put herself in front of every major crime boss in the city and admit she'd been broken. "No," she said immediately. "Celine," Damien started. "No, I'm not doing that. I'm not parading my trauma in front of criminals so you can get your empire back." "It's not about the empire," Marcus said. "It's about stopping Kozlov. If he consolidates Damien's territory, he becomes the most powerful syndicate in the city. And Kozlov doesn't believe in rules, doesn't believe in avoiding civilian casualties, doesn't believe in anything except power and fear. That's not my problem. It will be. When he comes for you, when he ties up the loose end you represent." Marcus stepped closer. "You think he'll let you live? You think he'll forget you killed his men, escaped his basement? He's hunting you right now. The only way you survive is if we take him down first." Celine wanted to argue, wanted to say she could disappear again, could run, could survive on her own, but she'd tried that for 8 months, and it had led her right back to violence. "What would I have to do?" she asked quietly. "Appear before Victor Chen's counsel, show your injuries, testify to the torture, corroborate Damien's story that the contracts were signed under extreme duress." Marcus pulled out more documents. "Chen's counsel meets tomorrow night. Neutral ground, heavily guarded. If we can get there, if we can make our case, Chen has the authority to void the contracts and sanction Kozlov for breaking protocol. And if we can't get there, then Kozlov wins, and we're all dead within 72 hours. The choice crystallized. Run and die slowly, or fight and maybe live." Celine looked at Damien. He was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Hope mixed with guilt mixed with something else. Something that looked like it mattered what she chose. "Okay," she said. "I'll do it." Relief flooded Damien's face. "Thank you. Don't thank me yet. First, we have to survive long enough to get there. Celine turned to Marcus. Where's the meeting? Chinatown, Red Lotus Temple, 7 p.m. tomorrow. That's 20 hours from now. Kozlov will know we're coming. Probably. So we'll be walking into an ambush. Most likely. Celine laughed. Couldn't help it. The absurdity of it all. So your plan is to parade into enemy territory, wounded and hunted, to testify in front of crime bosses who probably want us both dead, hoping one of them decides to follow rules instead of profit? That's the plan, Marcus confirmed. It's a terrible plan. You have a better one? Celine thought about it. Ran scenarios, calculated odds, came up empty. No, she admitted, but we need to change the approach. Can't just walk in the front door. We need leverage, something that makes Chen want to listen. Like what? Like proof Kozlov's planning to break neutral territory rules, like evidence he's coming after Chen next. Damien's eyes lit up. The documents. The ones showing Kozlov's expansion plans. I've seen them. He's mapping territories that include Chen's operations. Where are these documents? Kozlov's main office, top floor of the Meridian building. The most secure building he owns, Marcus added. 24-hour security, cameras everywhere, armed guards on every floor. Perfect, Celine said. They both looked at her like she'd lost her mind. Perfect, Damien repeated. Yeah, because nobody expects an attack on the most secure location. They expect us to run, to hide, to wait for the meeting. Celine stood, testing her weight on her prosthetic. So we do the opposite. We hit Kozlov's office tonight, get the documents, get the leverage, and we walk into that meeting tomorrow with proof that Kozlov's the real threat. That's insane, Marcus said. That's survival. Celine looked at both of them. You said it yourself. We're dead if we wait. So we don't wait. We attack. We take what we need. And we force Chen to choose between letting Kozlov break all the rules or sanctioning him properly. Damien was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled. It was the smile of a man who just remembered what he was good at. Okay, he said. Let's go to war. Rita appeared from the back office. You people are insane. You know that, right? We've been told, Celine said. How many of you are going? 3, Damien said. Me, Celine, and Marcus. Rita shook her head. You'll need at least 5 for building infiltration. I know the Meridian. Used to train security there before they went private. You're offering to help? Celine asked. I'm offering information, floor plans, security rotations, guard positions. Rita paused. And maybe 1 extra pair of hands if you promise not to get me killed. Can't promise that, Damien said honestly. Figures, Mud. But Rita was smiling. Fuck it, I'm in. Been too long since I did something stupid. They spent the next 6 hours planning. Rita pulled up building schematics from memory, drew floor plans on the gym whiteboard, marked security positions, exit routes, weak points. Marcus provided intel on Kozlov's patterns. When he worked late. Which guards rotated when? How many people would be in the building at 3 a.m.? Damien contributed knowledge of the office layout, where Kozlov kept documents, safe locations, security measures. Celine tied it together, built infiltration routes, assigned roles, planned contingencies. By sunrise, they had something resembling a plan, a terrible, desperate, probably suicidal plan, but a plan nonetheless. We go in at 2 a.m., Celine said, pointing at the whiteboard. Rita and Marcus create a distraction on the ground floor, fire alarm, smoke, something that pulls security away from the elevators. Damien and I use the confusion to reach the service elevator, take it to the top floor, grab the documents, get out before anyone realizes we were there. And if someone realizes, Rita asked, then we fight our way out. With what weapons? You two can barely stand. Celine looked at Damien. He looked back. Something unspoken passed between them. We'll manage, Celine said. Rita didn't look convinced, but she didn't argue. They spent the day resting, eating, preparing mentally for what came next. Celine changed her bandages, checked her prosthetic, tested her grip strength with her remaining fingers. 70%. Rita had been optimistic. It was closer to 50, but 50 was enough. Had to be. Damien cleaned weapons, checked ammunition, moved through preparations with mechanical efficiency, but his hands shook slightly. Not from fear, from the weight of knowing this was the last throw of the dice. Win tonight or lose everything. At midnight, Marcus returned with supplies. Dark clothes, tactical vests, weapons. Enough firepower to start a small war, which was exactly what they were about to do. They geared up in silence. Celine strapped a knife to her thigh, another to her ankle, took a compact 9mm and extra magazines. The weight felt familiar, felt right, felt like going home to a place she'd sworn never to return. Damien caught her eye across the room. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. "You could walk away. Disappear. I'd understand." "I know. So why stay?" Celine thought about her answer. Thought about 8 months of hiding, of being invisible, of dying slowly from the inside out. Thought about the moment in the basement when Damien had signed away his empire to save her life. Thought about the way he looked at her now. Like she mattered. Like she was more than her body count and her scars. "Because hiding didn't save me," she said finally. "It just made me a different kind of dead. At least this way I'm choosing. I'm fighting. She struggled for the word. "Alive?" Damien offered. "Yeah, alive." He nodded, understanding in his eyes. At 1:30 a.m., they left the gym. The city was quiet, that pre-dawn silence when even criminals were sleeping. Perfect time for war. They split into 2 teams. Rita and Marcus headed for the ground floor entrance. Damien and Celine approached from the service alley. The Meridian building rose 40 stories above them, glass and steel reflecting city lights like a monument to power. Kozlov's kingdom, about to become his tomb. "Ready?" Damien whispered. Celine checked her weapon one last time. "No." "Me neither." They moved. Rita's distraction went off at exactly 2 a.m. Fire alarm screaming, smoke pouring from the first floor windows, security flooding toward the commotion. Damien and Celine hit the service entrance while guards were distracted. Lock pick. 30 seconds. Door open. Inside. Service elevator straight ahead. They were halfway there when a guard appeared from around the corner. Young, surprised, hand going for his radio. Celine moved on instinct, crossed the distance in 3 strides, drove her palm into his throat, silenced him before he could call out. He went down choking. She stood over him, breathing hard, and realized what she'd just done. Muscle memory. The weapon waking up. Damien was watching her with an expression she couldn't read. "Keep moving," she said. They reached the elevator. Damien hit the button for the 40th floor. The doors closed. They rose through the building like a bullet through a barrel. 35 floors, 38, 40. Doors opened. Kozlov's office floor. Empty. Too empty. "Trap," Celine whispered. "I know." They moved anyway. Because they'd come too far to turn back now. Because the documents were here somewhere. Because this was the only chance they had. Kozlov's office was at the end of the hall. Double doors. Unlocked. Inside, the office was dark except for the city lights streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. And in the center of the room, sitting at his desk like he'd been waiting, Kozlov, smiling. "Damien Varelli," he said pleasantly, "I knew you would come. You are predictable man, desperate man, dead man." The lights came on. 15 armed men materialized from shadows, all pointing weapons at Celine and Damien. They were surrounded, outgunned, trapped. "Drop weapons," Kozlov ordered, "or I kill you both where you stand." Celine looked at Damien. Damien looked back. They'd come here knowing this might happen, knowing it was probably a trap, but they'd come anyway. Because sometimes the only way forward was straight into the fire. Celine's finger tightened on her trigger. Damien's did the same. Kozlov saw it and laughed. "You think you can fight? You think you can win?" "No," Celine said quietly, "but we can make you bleed." Her weapon came up. Damien's came up. And in that frozen moment before bullets flew and blood spilled and everything went to hell, Celine felt something she hadn't felt in years. Not fear, not resignation, but pure crystalline clarity. This was who she was. Not the waitress, not the victim, not the broken girl hiding from her past. She was the weapon, the survivor, the one who walked into fire and came out alive. And if she was going to die tonight, She was going to die fighting. Kozlov's smile faltered, because he saw it too. Saw the shift. Saw the moment Celine Vale stopped being prey and became the most dangerous thing in the room. Fire, he ordered, and the world exploded into violence. Gunfire tore through Kozlov's office like thunder trapped in a cage. Celine moved before conscious thought could slow her down. Dropped to the floor as bullets shredded the air where her head had been, rolled left behind Kozlov's massive desk, came up firing. 2 shots, center mass. 1 guard down. Damien had gone right, using a support pillar for cover. His weapon barked 3 times. Another guard fell, but there were too many, 15 against 2. The math was brutal and simple. Glass exploded behind them as stray rounds punched through the windows. Cold night air rushed in. The city sprawled below, oblivious to the war happening 40 stories up. Celine's magazine ran dry. She ejected it, slapped in a fresh one, kept moving, never staying still, never giving them a clean shot. Her ruined hand screamed, but she ignored it. Pain was just information. Information could be processed later. A guard rushed the desk. Too aggressive, too confident. Celine waited until he was close. Then she came up fast, drove her elbow into his nose. Cartilage crunched. He staggered back and she put 2 rounds in his chest before he could recover. 3 down. 12 to go. Across the room, Damien was bleeding from a graze across his ribs, but still fighting. Moving with the brutal efficiency of a man who'd survived a decade in hell by being meaner than everyone trying to kill him. 4 down now. 11. But they were running out of ammunition, out of space, out of time. Kozlov had retreated behind his guards. Coward. Letting others die while he watched. Enough! His voice cut through the chaos. Cease fire! The shooting stopped. Celine stayed behind cover, breathing hard, weapon trained on the last position she'd seen movement. You cannot win this, Kozlov called out. You are outnumbered, outgunned, surrounded. But I am reasonable man. I give you choice. What choice? Damien shouted back. Surrender. Drop weapons. Come out. I will make death quick, painless, professional. And if we don't? Then I make it slow, painful, educational, for everyone who thinks they can challenge me. Celine looked across the destroyed office, caught Damien's eye. He was thinking the same thing she was. Kozlov was stalling, buying time. For what? Then she heard it, sirens getting closer. Someone had called the cops. The firefight, the broken windows, the screaming. It had attracted attention, and Kozlov couldn't afford cops finding a battlefield in his office. Too many questions, too much evidence, too much exposure. He needed them dead before the police arrived, which meant he was desperate, and desperate men made mistakes. Okay, Celine called out. We surrender. Damien's head snapped toward her, betrayal and confusion in his eyes. She held up 3 fingers where only he could see, then 2. 1. She stood, hands raised, weapon dangling from her trigger finger by the guard. Kozlov's men tensed, uncertain. Smart girl, Kozlov said. He stepped out from behind his human shields, smiled. Now your friend. Tell him to come out too. Damien, Celine said clearly. It's over. Come out. A pause. Then Damien stood, hands up, weapon loose. Kozlov's smile widened. Finally. You both accept reality. Good. This makes things easier. He pulled his own weapon, raised it toward Celine, and Celine threw herself sideways. Her weapon, still on her finger, came up in one fluid motion. She fired from the ground. 1 shot, perfectly placed. Kozlov's knee exploded. He went down screaming. His guards froze for half a second. Half a second was all Damien needed. He was already moving, already firing, taking down 2 guards before they could react. Celine rolled, came up, put rounds into another guard's chest. The room erupted into chaos again. But this time the dynamics had shifted. Kozlov was down. The leader wounded. The pack suddenly leaderless. Some guards kept fighting. Some ran. One dropped his weapon and put his hands up. Celine and Damien moved through them like a storm through kindling. Every shot counted. Every movement economical. They'd trained together for weeks and the muscle memory was there now, moving in sync without needing to communicate. When the shooting finally stopped, 7 more guards were down. 4 had fled. One was surrendering, and Kozlov lay on the floor, clutching his ruined knee, face white with pain and rage. Celine walked over to him, kicked his weapon away, looked down at the man who'd tortured her, who'd tried to steal Damien's empire, who'd thought power made him untouchable. "The documents," she said. "Where are they?" "Fuck you." Celine pressed her boot against his shattered knee. Kozlov screamed. "The documents," she repeated. "Safe! Behind the painting. Code is 7392. Damien was already moving, found the safe, opened it, pulled out folders. "Got them," he said. Sirens were close now. Maybe 2 minutes out. "We need to go." Marcus's voice came through Celine's earpiece. "Police are surrounding the building. You've got 90 seconds before they lock it down." Celine looked at Kozlov, at the man who'd caused so much pain, who deserved to answer for everything he'd done. She could kill him, one shot, end it. Nobody would blame her. Her finger tightened on the trigger. "Don't," Damien said quietly behind her. "Why not?" "Because we're not them anymore. We're trying to be something else. Remember?" Celine's jaw tightened. Every instinct screamed to pull the trigger, to end the threat, to make sure Kozlov never hurt anyone again. But Damien was right. If she killed him now, in cold blood while he was helpless, she'd become exactly what she'd been running from. The weapon without conscience. The killer without choice. She lowered her weapon. "You're lucky," she told Kozlov. "He's trying to make me better." They ran. Service elevator. Down 40 floors while police flooded in below. Rita and Marcus were waiting in the alley with a van. They piled in. Rita hit the gas. Behind them, police cars surrounded the Meridian building. Too late. Too slow. The van merged into early morning traffic, just another vehicle in a city that never really slept. Nobody spoke for 5 blocks. Then Damien started laughing, quiet at first, then louder. "We did it," he said. "We actually fucking did it." Celine looked at the folders in her lap, at the documents that proved Kozlov's expansion plans, at the evidence that would force Victor Chen to act. "We survived," she corrected. "We haven't won yet." "Close enough for now." Rita dropped them at a safe house Marcus had arranged. Apartment in a neighborhood where people minded their own business and cameras mysteriously malfunctioned. They had 14 hours until the meeting with Victor Chen. 14 hours to rest, to plan, to prepare for the next war. Celine cleaned her weapon, changed bandages, tried not to think about how many people she'd killed tonight. Stopped counting years ago for a reason. Damien sat by the window, staring at nothing, looking like a man trying to figure out who he was now that everything he'd built was gone. "You okay?" Celine asked. "No." Honest. Raw. "I signed my empire away, shot my way through Kozlov's building, broke every rule I used to live by. And I don't know if I'm changing or just destroying myself differently." Celine sat next to him, close but not touching. "Change looks like destruction from the inside," she said. "Feels like dying. Feels like losing everything. But maybe that's what it takes. Maybe you have to burn down who you were to become who you're supposed to be." "And who am I supposed to be?" "I don't know. But I think you're closer to figuring it out than you were a month ago." Damien looked at her. Really looked. "What about you? Who are you supposed to be?" Celine touched her bandaged hand, felt the absence where 2 fingers used to be. "I used to think I was supposed to be invisible, safe, hidden from everything I'd done, everything I'd been. And now? Now I think maybe I'm supposed to be exactly what I am. A survivor who fights, a killer who chooses when not to kill, someone broken who's stronger for the breaking." "That sounds exhausting." "It is." They sat in comfortable silence as dawn broke over the city, pink and gold light spilling across buildings that had witnessed too much violence and somehow kept standing anyway. At 6 p.m., they dressed for the meeting. Marcus had acquired formal clothes, dark suits, professional, the kind of thing you wore when appearing before crime lords who valued presentation. Celine looked at herself in the mirror. The suit fit well despite her injuries. Her hair was pulled back, face clean. She looked almost respectable. Almost. The bandages on her hand told a different story. The prosthetic leg clicking with each step told another. She was a walking testament to survival, to pain transformed into power. Good enough. The Red Lotus Temple sat in the heart of Chinatown. Old building, 3 stories, red pillars and gold accents. Beautiful and dangerous in equal measure. Victor Chen's neutral ground. The place where disputes were settled without bloodshed. Usually. They arrived at 6:45. Early, but not suspiciously so. Guards met them at the entrance, searched them, confiscated their weapons. Professional. Thorough. Inside, the temple had been converted into something between courthouse and boardroom. Long table, chairs on either side. Victor Chen at the head, sitting like a judge preparing to render verdict. He was older than Celine expected. 70, maybe? But his eyes were sharp, calculating. Damien Varelli, Chen said. His English was perfect, no accent. I did not expect to see you here. Rumor says you retired. Rumors are often wrong. Indeed, Chen's gaze shifted to Celine. And you are? Celine Vale, witness to the events in question. Ah, the woman Kozlov tortured. I've heard stories. Chen gestured to chairs. Sit. We have much to discuss. They sat. Marcus took a position behind them. Silent support. Doors opened on the opposite side. Kozlov entered, limping badly, his knee wrapped in professional medical bandaging, face pale with pain and medication, but alive, and smiling. Victor, he said warmly, thank you for arranging this meeting. I want to clear up misunderstandings about my acquisition of Varelli territories. Misunderstandings, Chen repeated flatly. Interesting word choice. Kozlov sat across from them. His own men took positions behind him. The table became a border. A line neither side could cross without violating protocol. Chen opened a folder. I have reviewed preliminary documents. Transfer papers signed by Damien Varelli. Witnessed, notarized, all appearing legitimate on surface. Because they are legitimate, Kozlov said. Are they? Chen looked at Damien. You contest this? I signed under duress. Kozlov kidnapped me, tortured Miss Vale in front of me, threatened to kill us both unless I signed everything over. Lies, Kozlov said calmly. Damien made bad business decisions. Lost money, lost face. Rather than admit failure, he creates fantasy about torture and kidnapping. Chen's expression didn't change. Miss Vale, show me your hand. Celine unwrapped the bandages. The wounds were still fresh, angry, 2 fingers gone at the second knuckle. Chen studied them without visible emotion. How did this happen? Kozlov cut them off, one at a time, trying to force Damien to sign contracts. She is lying, Kozlov said. She lost fingers in accident, unrelated to business matters. What kind of accident? Chen asked. I do not know. I was not there. But criminals lie, especially criminals who killed my men and destroyed my property last night. Chen looked at Celine. You killed his men? In self-defense, after escaping the basement where he tortured me. You have proof of this torture? Witnesses? Evidence beyond your injuries? This was the pivot point. The moment where belief mattered more than truth. Celine met Chen's eyes. The injuries are evidence. Fresh. Professional cuts designed to maximize pain. Medical records will show they happened 2 days ago. Same time Damien signed the contracts. Timeline proves the connection. Timeline proves nothing, Kozlov interrupted. Timeline is coincidence. Then explain the documents we recovered from your office, Damien said. He slid the folders across the table. Expansion plans. Maps showing you targeting not just my territories, but Chen's operations too. You were using my empire as a stepping stone to challenge neutral territory. Chen picked up the folders, opened them. His expression finally changed. Something cold settled into his eyes. Where did you get these? He asked quietly. Your office, Damien said to Kozlov. You're safe. Your handwriting on the margins. Kozlov's face went white. Those are forgeries, planted evidence. They have your signature, Chen interrupted. Your seal, your tactical annotations. He set the folders down carefully. You were planning to violate neutral territory agreements, to expand into zones protected by council charter. I can explain to the council at formal hearing, which I am calling for next week. Chen's voice was ice. Until then, All transfers of Virelli territories are suspended pending investigation into acquisition methods. You cannot do this, Kozlov stood. I have rights. I have contracts. You have accusations of torture, kidnapping, and conspiracy to violate neutral agreements. Sit down. The command in Chen's voice was absolute. Kozlov sat. Chen turned to Damien. Your territories remain yours pending investigation. If evidence supports your claims of duress, transfers will be voided completely. If not, he paused. You will answer for killing Kozlov's men and destroying his property. Understood. Miss Vale, you will remain available for testimony. Leave the city, and I will consider it admission of guilt. I'm not going anywhere, Celine said. Chen nodded once. Then we are done here. Formal hearing in 7 days. Both parties will present evidence. Council will render final judgment. He stood. Meeting adjourned. Guards appeared to escort them out. Separate exits for each party. As Celine passed Kozlov, he leaned close enough to whisper, This is not over. You cost me empire, cost me reputation. I will take everything from you, slowly, painfully. Celine stopped, looked at him. You already did your worst. I'm still standing. What does that tell you? She walked away before he could answer. Outside the temple, rain had started again. The city washing itself clean of another day's violence. Marcus was waiting with the van. How'd it go? He asked. We bought time, Damien said. 7 days until final hearing. Think Chen will rule in our favor? I think he'll rule against Kozlov for breaking protocol. Whether that helps us? Damien shrugged. We'll find out. They drove through the city in silence. The safe house appeared like salvation after the tension of the temple. Inside, Rita had food waiting. Real food. Hot soup. Fresh bread. Coffee that didn't taste like burnt metal. You all look like death, she said. Eat, rest, recover. 7 days is enough time to heal if you're smart about it. They ate, and for the first time in days, the urgency faded enough to feel something other than adrenaline and fear. Celine sat on the couch, exhaustion finally catching up. Her hand throbbed. Her leg ached. Every muscle felt like it had been worked past its limit. Damien sat next to her, careful, respectful of space. Thank you, he said quietly, for testifying, for fighting, for not leaving when you could have. You thanked me already. I'll probably keep thanking you until it feels like enough. Celine looked at him, at this man who'd been a monster and was trying desperately to become something else. Who'd signed away everything he'd built to save her life. Who'd fought beside her like they were equals instead of employer and contractor. What happens after the hearing? She asked. If we win, I get my territories back. Rebuild. Try to run things differently than before. And if we lose, we run, disappear, start over somewhere Kozlov's reach doesn't extend. Does such a place exist? Probably not, but we try anyway. Celine smiled despite everything. We. You keep saying we. Yeah. This was supposed to be a 6-week contract, training your people, nothing more. Plans change. They do. Silence settled, comfortable, understanding. I don't know what this is, Damien said finally. Between us, I don't know what to call it, but I know I don't want it to end when the contract runs out. Celine's chest tightened. I'm not good at this. At people. At trusting. At, she gestured vaguely, whatever this is. Me neither, but maybe that's okay. Maybe we figure it out together. Together sounds dangerous. Everything about us is dangerous. Might as well be dangerous together. Celine wanted to argue, wanted to list all the reasons this was a bad idea. Why killers shouldn't fall for each other. Why broken people couldn't build something whole. But she was tired of arguing. Tired of running, tired of being alone. Okay, she said. Okay. Together. We'll try. Damien's smile was real this time. Unguarded. He reached for her hand, stopped when he realized it was the injured one. Reached for the other instead. Celine let him take it. Their fingers intertwined, and something clicked into place that neither had known was missing. The 7 days before the hearing passed in a blur. Celine healed, slowly. Her hand knitted together, still hurt, still missing fingers, but functional. Rita trained them both. Gentle sessions focused on recovery and maintenance rather than intensity. Marcus gathered evidence, witness statements, medical records, timeline documentation, built a case strong enough to prove duress, strong enough to prove Kozlov had broken every rule. The night before the hearing, Celine couldn't sleep. She stood by the window watching rain fall, thinking about everything that had led here. The warehouse fire that took her leg. The 8 months hiding. The night Damien walked into the obsidian room drunk and arrogant. The fight that changed everything. All of it building to tomorrow. To a room full of crime lords deciding if she and Damien lived or died. Footsteps behind her. Damien appeared, carrying 2 mugs of coffee. "Couldn't sleep either?" he asked. "Too much on my mind." He handed her a mug, stood next to her, their shoulders almost touching. "You scared?" he asked. "Terrified." "Good. Means you're sane." They drank coffee and watched the rain and didn't talk about tomorrow. Didn't need to. Whatever happened would happen. They'd face it together. The hearing took place in a building that looked like a bank but functioned as a courthouse for criminals. Victor Chen presided, flanked by council members representing the major syndicates. Russian, Chinese, Italian, Japanese, Irish, all the major players, all watching. Kozlov presented first. His lawyers were expensive and slick. They painted Damien as unstable, as violent, as a man who signed contracts willingly, then fabricated torture stories to escape legal obligation. They questioned Celine's credibility, brought up her black ops past, suggested she was a trained liar, a killer who couldn't be trusted. It was brutal and professional. When they finished, Chen turned to Damien. "Your response?" Marcus stood, presented medical evidence, timeline documentation, witness statements from hospital staff who'd treated Celine's fresh injuries 2 days after the contracts were signed, presented the expansion documents showing Kozlov's plans to violate neutral territory, presented testimony from one of Kozlov's own guards who'd witnessed the torture and fled rather than participate further. The evidence stacked up, piece by piece, undeniable. Chen reviewed everything in silence. The council members whispered among themselves. Finally, Chen spoke. "The evidence supports Mr. Varelli's claims. The timeline proves Miss Vale's injuries occurred concurrent with contract signing. The expansion documents prove Mr. Kozlov intended to violate neutral territory agreements." He looked at Kozlov. "Your acquisition is ruled invalid. All territories revert to Damien Varelli immediately." Kozlov's face went purple. "This is outrageous. You cannot—" "Furthermore," Chen continued, "you are sanctioned for breaking protocol, for torture, for kidnapping, for conspiracy against neutral territories. Your operations in this city are suspended for 1 year. Violations will result in permanent expulsion from council protection." The room went silent. Permanent expulsion meant open season, meant every syndicate could target Kozlov without consequences, meant death sentence. Kozlov stood, shaking with rage. "You will regret this, all of you." "Are you threatening council?" Chen's voice dropped to absolute zero. Kozlov looked around, saw the guards moving closer, saw the council members' faces, saw he'd lost. "No," he said finally. "No threat. I accept ruling." "Smart." Chen gestured to guards. "Escort him out. Make sure he understands the boundaries of his suspension." They dragged Kozlov away. Chen turned to Damien. "Your empire is restored. Use it more wisely than before." "I will." "And Miss Vale." Chen looked at her. "You have shown remarkable courage. The council recognizes your testimony as truthful and valuable. You have our respect." Coming from Victor Chen, that meant something, meant protection, meant she could walk the city's underworld without looking over her shoulder every second. Outside the building, rain had stopped. The city looked clean, fresh, like it had been waiting for them to survive. Marcus was smiling, actually smiling. "You did it, both of you." "We did it," Damien corrected. "All of us." Rita appeared from where she'd been waiting with the van. "So what now? Back to business as usual?" Damien looked at Celine. Celine looked back. "Not exactly," Damien said. 3 months later, Celine stood in a building that used to be a warehouse. Now it was something else. The sign above the door read, "Phoenix Ground, Adaptive Self-Defense Academy." Inside, 20 students were training, some missing limbs, some with scars, some with trauma written in their eyes. All learning to fight, all learning they were stronger than whatever broke them. Celine walked between them, correcting form, offering encouragement, seeing herself in every face that refused to quit. Rita taught basic combat. Marcus taught tactical awareness. Other instructors covered everything from boxing to grappling to weapons defense. But Celine taught the most important lesson. Survival wasn't about never falling. It was about getting up every single time. Damien appeared in the doorway. He'd changed in 3 months. Looked lighter, less haunted. His empire was smaller now, deliberately. He'd cut the violent operations. The extortion, the fear-based control. What remained was legitimate businesses with gray market edges. Not clean, but cleaner. Not perfect, but better. He watched Celine work with a young woman who'd lost both legs in an accident, watched her teach balance, leverage, how to use what others saw as weakness. When the session ended, Celine walked over. "How'd it go?" she asked. "Meeting with the mayor's office. They're willing to look the other way on some of our operations if we help keep the peace in certain neighborhoods." "You becoming a civics partner now?" "Something like that. Weird, right?" "Everything about us is weird." Damien smiled, pulled her close, kissed her forehead. "True, but it's our weird." Celine leaned into him, let herself feel safe for once. Students filtered out, calling goodbyes, promising to see her next week. The building emptied. Just Celine and Damien standing in space that used to hold violence and now held hope. "You ever regret it?" Damien asked quietly. "Taking the contract, getting involved with me? Everything that happened?" Celine thought about the question. Thought about her destroyed hand. Her scars, the nightmares that still came some nights. Thought about the students who'd found strength here. The lives changed. The people who looked at her and saw possibility instead of pity. Thought about Damien, about how they'd both been broken and somehow made each other stronger in the breaking. "No," she said, "I don't regret it. Not even a little. That night in the obsidian room, when you insulted me, when you challenged me, you thought you were humiliating me, breaking me. I was an asshole. You were, but you were also giving me something I needed." She looked up at him. "You gave me a reason to stop hiding, to fight again, to remember who I was before fear made me small. I almost got you killed. You also saved my life, multiple times. We're even." Damien held her tighter. "I love you. You know that, right?" The words landed gentle, real. Celine had never been good at saying them back. Too many years alone, too much trauma, too many walls. But standing here, in this building they'd built together, surrounded by evidence that broken things could become beautiful. "I love you too," she said, and meant it. They stood there as evening light streamed through windows, painting everything gold. Outside, the city continued its endless cycle: violence and survival, despair and hope, death and rebirth. But inside Phoenix ground, something different was happening. People were learning they didn't have to be defined by what broke them. They could be defined by what they built afterward. Celine thought about the girl she'd been before the fire. The soldier who followed orders without question. The killer who never hesitated. That girl was gone, burned away in flames and torture and choices that cost everything. What remained was someone harder, scarred, missing pieces, but also stronger, more whole, more human. She looked at Damien and saw the same transformation. The crime boss becoming something gentler without losing his edge. The monster learning how to be a man again. Neither of them were perfect. Neither of them were clean. But they were trying. And trying mattered more than succeeding. Because the real victory wasn't in never falling. It was in standing up afterward. In choosing to build instead of destroy. In loving despite the scars. In surviving and deciding that survival wasn't enough. You had to live too. "Come on," Celine said, pulling away gently. "Let's go home." "Home sounds good." They locked up Phoenix ground, set the alarms, walked out into the city together, not hiding anymore, not running, just living. Two broken people who'd found each other in fire and blood and decided that maybe, just maybe, broken pieces could fit together into something stronger than either had been alone. The city lights reflected off wet pavement. Rain was coming again. It always was in this city. But Celine had learned something important over the past months. Rain washed things clean, made space for new growth. And if you could survive the storm, if you could stand in the downpour and refuse to drown, you could survive anything. She took Damien's hand. He squeezed back, and together they walked into whatever came next. Not afraid, not hiding, not broken, just alive. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.